This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Naruto frees Jellal from prison. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Hayate looked for any objections before confirming Naruto's request. Very well, you will fight 2 rounds. He looked to his cage and received a nod before turning to Anko. Please begin match selection. The match selection board lit up, flipping through given names before landing on the board read, Akamichi Choji vs Shina Renji. Choji grimaced about fighting first but put away his chips for later. Renji of Iwa however looked towards Naruto, his eyes saying, "You're next after this loser." Naruto just scoffed. "Would everyone but the competitors clear the stage?" said Hayate in a monotone, leaving no room for argument. The senseis left to be with their students while Naruto walked to the 2 non-fighting members of the Iwa team. "You know," Naruto began in a bemused tone, "I thought I left you guys without any scrolls. How the fuck are you here?" Ayane smirked at him before walking closer to him, swaying her hips a bit, causing her remaining teammate to growl. Knowing she was going to flirt with the Konoha genin. "Well," she said huskily, running her fingers against the silver-haired boy's chest, "we wouldn't be shinobi if I gave away something as precious as that so easily." She grinded his leg, trying to get him riled up. "I had a separate scroll with another pair of scrolls within them." "Smart," Naruto replied with a grin. "I like that." He felt the eyes of his peers watching the engagement, but continued on regardless. "Of course you do, Kitsune-kun," she purred before being yanked away by her teammate. The Hayate from Iwa gave Naruto a glance. "We will get revenge on you for that humiliation in the forest. We'll start with your fellow Konoha genin and then, we'll get you." He turned and walked up the stairs toward a bulky-looking jonin he assumed was their sensei. Ayane was following him, but she turned back to give Naruto a sexy wink before following. Yup. He and Ayane would get along great, when not on the field of combat of course, considering their village's relationship with one another. Sighing to himself, he walked toward the area where the Konoha genin and their sensei had gathered. He ignored their looks and walked toward his teammates only to be stopped by Kakashi. "What's up, Cyclops sensei?" he asked innocently. "Kid," Naruto turned, noticing Team 10's sensei had decided to speak. "You do realize you were just talking to, I'm sorry, flirting with an Iwakunochi, don't you?" Naruto stared blankly at him. "You know, Iwa, the whole, we hate Konoha, bit didn't throw you off there." He didn't notice the expectant looks from everyone who wanted to hear. Hinata was slightly upset because Naruto hadn't been flirting with her like that. No one had even noticed. Sasuke was silently fuming either. Naruto looked at Asuma. "Well, what can I say?" He shrugged his shoulders casually. "I love a woman who can fight damn well like her. The fact that she can stab me in the back at any moment just makes her even sexier in my opinion." The 4 adults and some of his fellow genin stared at him, their mouths ajar. Well, Kakashi's mouth was as well, but you couldn't notice it behind the mask. Hinata was upset by the revelation, wondering what had happened to her. Naruto-kun, Sasuke, was silently fuming at the revelation. Sakura also looked somewhat upset by the revelation as well, which surprised her in itself. Kakashi finally mustered up the courage to ask, "And what were you 2 talking about?" "Nay. Sorry sensei, but what a man does with a lady should not be told," he replied happily. He saw their eyes bulge out of their heads at the implication, and noticing the others were about to butt in, he stopped them. "Look, we can argue about my flirtations with Iwa genin later," Naruto stated calmly as he turned to watch the upcoming match. "Right now though, Choji needs our support." Everyone followed his lead, gearing up to watch the match between Asuma's student and one Iwa genin. On the battlefield, "Are both contenders ready?" He received 2 nods. "You may begin." Renji flashed through hand signs. "Doden. Rokatoriru Earth Release. Rock Trail." He sent a trail of sharp rocks toward the chubby genin, who dodged to the right while he was still landing to the ground. Renji rushed him. Kuma no Terayanfu Bear's Triumph. He rammed Choji in the stomach, causing the genin to grunt in pain as he was forced into the wall. Renji stood tall. "Really now, is that all you have, fatty?" "Stands. He really shouldn't have done that," Shikamaru stated a bit anxiously. "Why's that?" asked Naruto, who was somewhat curious about what Shikamaru meant. Asuma answered instead. "Choji gets a bit upset when people call him fat." "So," was the reply he received from Naruto, who still wasn't getting it. "Just watch and you'll see," Shikamaru stated, slightly on edge. On the battlefield, Choji rose out of the dust left by the impact. His face was red with anger. "What did you just say?" he growled. "What's the matter? The fatty doesn't like being told the truth," stated Renji, smirking up a storm, trying to get a rise out of his opponent. It worked really well. Choji saw red. "Fuck you," he shouted rather uncharacteristically, because chubbies rule. He flashed through hand seals, Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique. His stomach region inflated to the size of a boulder and he began to spin the now boulder rushed Renji, who was actually surprised by the transformation. Not realizing he was an Akamichi and silently cursing to himself, he knew he wasn't going to be able to get away, so he let the fleshy boulder hit him. Choji didn't stop until he reached the other side. He dispelled the jutsu. He noticed the proctor was about to call the match when the body he believed to have sent into the stony floor stood up. He smirked at Choji, who still looked slightly angry. So, my opponent's an Akamichi, huh? Well, looks like you and I are the perfect match. Let's see which will win, my perfect body or your expansive body. He rushed at the young Akamichi, who pulled out a kunai. Upon noticing his opponent's gloves now had knife-like nails jetting from them, he reared his right arm back, ready to strike. Kuma no Sum, Bear Claw. His attack hit the kunai with a force so strong it almost forced the Akamichi to let go. He sent a quick kick that bounced off the younger boy's stomach as Choji punched him in the face. They both slide back, Choji looking somewhat tired while Renji slid back unharmed. He smirked at the plump boy. Well, I'm done with this. Looks like I'll end it now. He moved forward, his hands and feet on the floor, rushing forward in a bear-like sprint. A bear-like image appeared in over him. Eat this, one of my strongest techniques. Hokuto Shichise wa Raisuda, Great Bear's Wraith. Choji prepared to move, but found a pair of arms wrapped around him. He looked behind him and saw an exact replica of Renji. He immediately noticed what it was. When did he cast Iwabunshin no Jutsu, rock clone technique? He was about to break when he noticed his opponent was right in front of him. In a flash, Renji appeared behind him and stood up. The Iwabunshin behind Choji disappeared and left him standing for what felt like ages before cuts appeared all over his clothes, blood flying from them. He fell to the ground with a face that held an expression full of pain. Renji smirked as the medics were called and he was declared the winner. He then looked at Naruto and saw the frown upon his face. He stared at Naruto, smiled cynically and pointed toward him. Did you see that, Sparta? He asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. What happened to your friend there is going to happen to you next. He turned and walked back toward his team, not a care in the world. With Naruto, Choji's team prepared to go back to see him, but were stopped by Asuma. You can't, you haven't had your matches yet. He then looked toward Naruto, who was standing there gripping the railing, his eyes looking at the place his friend had fallen. The others followed Asuma's gaze. What did you do to them, Naruto? Choji's teammates and Naruto's own friends looked at him expectantly. I did what I had to make sure my team passed, he replied enigmatically. That answer isn't good enough, Naruto, said Shikamaru, slightly angry at him for being like this. The old Naruto would boast about anything he did. If he had done something to the Iwa Genin team before, they would know already, but this new Naruto, he didn't give up anything. He was smart, probably not as smart as him, but smart nonetheless. He didn't know yet, regardless of the current situation, what to think of the change yet, but he knew right now that he was pissed for having his best friend put in danger for what another of his friends had done. Naruto turned and looked them all in the eyes, showing them that he had lost all of his previous bravado. His eyes had turned serious and cold. You want to know? He asked stoically. I beat them and took their scrolls. One had thought I had left them with nothing, but apparently I was wrong. So you mean to tell me, began Ino, only to be cut off by Naruto. Yes, the scroll I gave you that helped you complete the exam was one of the scrolls they had collected. They were shocked by the revelation he had beaten that team and got their scrolls. One of their members just single-handedly decimated Choji and he supposedly defeated their entire team. Sasuke was unhappy with the news. He defeated that entire team by himself. He wasn't sure he could even do that. Just how strong have you gotten, Naruto? Before anyone could say anything further, the next match was spun on the board. Aburame Shino vs Sabaku Kankuro. Shino nodded and walked toward the steps, intending to defeat his opponent on the other side. Kankuro smirked, following Shino's lead down the stairs. Finally, when they were at the center, they stood on either side of Hayate, Koff, or both Genin ready. He received 2 nods. Very well, begin. Shino went in to strike Kankuro, who was jumping back to avoid attack after watching only Gaara do anything in the second exam. They had no clue what he could do. However, he assumed it was logical to try and force him to use his abilities. Shino then noticed something different about the person in front of him from previous encounters. His bugs felt small amounts of chakra being threaded into the Kankuro in front of him. That's when he began to realize something about the shinobi in front of him. He was from Suna, so the logical guess is that he was a user of the Kugutsu no Jutsu puppet technique. The question was where the real Kankuro was. He spread out his arms. You're not the real Kankuro, he stated simply, shocking most people in the room. With Naruto. So he noticed. Huh, Naruto said, smirking lightly. What do you mean, Naruto? Asked Sakura in curiosity. What I mean, Pinky, he stated in an amused tone. A change from his previous one is that he finally noticed that the guy he is fighting right now is a doll. He noted the skeptic looks from the genin around him. Look, don't believe me, just how Hina-chan over there looks with her Byaku thingy. Naruto-kun, it's called, Byakugan, white-eye, the lavender-eyed girl stammered. She however nodded nonetheless, determined to show the object of her affections her strength, Byakugan. She looked toward her friend's opponent and saw small chakra-like strings lodged into its back. However, what was even more surprising was that there was a person in the gourd on the puppet's back. Naruto-kun is correct. There are several strings made of chakra, elongated from Shino-kun's opponent's back. So, Sakura continued from where Hinata left off, catching their attention. It's the Kugetsu no Jutsu, an art used primarily in Suna using Chakura no Ito, chakra threads. The user is capable of controlling puppets from far distances. Depending on the user's control, a user would be able to do something like this. Ding, 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 we have a winner here, people, shouted Naruto, throwing his hands up into the air before point at Sakura, and Pinky wins the prize. I'd like to thank all of our contestants for playing. Sakura looked at him, her eye twitching dangerously. Why do you keep calling me Pinky? Maybe it has something to do with your pink hair, he supplied in a friendly manner. She blushed in embarrassment as a few of her fellow genin laughed at her misfortune. She even saw Sasuke smirk a little. Deciding to ignore the embarrassment, she posed Naruto a different question. How did you know it wasn't the real Kankuro? He shrugged at her. Would you believe? Lucky guess. Everyone face faulted. Kiba got up from his face fault and looked toward the battlefield. We should tell Shino. He was about to shout out to Shino only to feel a hand on his shoulder. He looked back and saw his sensei behind him. Kiba, the red-eyed beauty, began. We can't help him, it's against the rules, all we can do is watch. Reluctantly, Kiba agreed while everyone else turned back to watch the match. Naruto mused over the situation. What will you do now, Shino? He pondered silently. On the battlefield, instead of denying it, Kankuro chose to confirm his suspicions. You're right, his voice projecting through the puppet. This isn't me at all, it's one of my puppets, Karasu Crow. Another pair of arms, long and wooden, burst through his sides. His face started to peel away, revealing one wooden eye. But the question is this: where am I? The puppet fired smoke pellets from one of its hands, covering the floor with smoke and obscuring Shino's sight. Shino, for the lack of a better term, was blind. He couldn't see anything in this smoke. His sixth sense kicked in, allowing him to avoid a stab from one of Karasu's arms and push it away. He dogged another strike and swung around, placing his hands on the gourd attached to the puppet's back and pushed off, jumping out of the smoke. He landed on the ground, his hands at his sides. Suddenly, while the smoke was clearing, they heard a shout of "What?" coming from the smoke. As it cleared, they found that the gourd on Karasu's back had disappeared and Kankuro had appeared at his puppet's side. What was strange was that bugs were crawling all over his fingers. Shino pulled on his glasses. It seems my suspicions were correct, he stated in monotone. Kankuro growled at Shino, knowing this was his doing. What is this? These are my Kikaichu bugs. They are primarily used by my clan for tracking and other various purposes. However, they are extremely useful for the purpose of eating opponents' chakra. Why, you asked? Because their primary source of nourishment is chakra itself, thus allowing me to act as a hive to them in turn for use of their services. He pointed toward Karasu. Right now, they are eating at the chakra sting that you are using to keep connected to Karasu. Your movements with him will become sluggish until you eventually must disconnect from him to conserve what chakra you have left. Kankuro growled. Knowing he was right, he now remembered the lessons that were given in the academy on their allies in Konoha. Shino's clan was renowned for their use of bugs during and outside of combat. During the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars, they were the nightmare of anyone any team combat team encountered because they would end up expending more chakra while fighting. Kankuro knew the situation was dire, so he prepared to pull out a soldier pill, only to notice Shino was now in front of him. Kikaichu bugs crawling all over him. Some were flying onto his body and began to eat his chakra as well. He began to feel lightheaded and dropped the pill to the floor. Shino looked towards him. Why did you lose, you wonder? You were arrogant and brash. You should have kept quiet and tried to conceal the fact that Karasu was a puppet. You could have done so much better though. It is still illogical to say you would win unless you had some way to counteract Kikaichu bugs, because then we would fight until you had finally worn out. Shino's opponent's feet sank, likely from chakra exhaustion. You lose, Kankuro-san. He began to walk back up the stairs as he was declared the winner. Konkuro was taken by the medic Nin to the hospital wing. With Tsunateam, Tamari could only shake her head at the lack of strategy that her brother had shown. Not only that, she began to think, but we just lost another factor that would help us in the setup for the invasion. She looked toward her youngest brother and saw the fact that he looked bored with the current matches. Hopefully he doesn't freak out on us. Meanwhile, Orochimaru, who was disguised as a sensei from Ado, was silently cursing the boy who had just lost because of him. They may have just lost good positioning and time needed to make it a success. The boy would pay for this. He then looked to the enigma that was the new Uzumaki Naruto, who was looking at him almost with a knowing smile. He saw the boy's eyes flash red for a second and then turn back to their normal icy blue. He was slightly surprised when he had found the boy had survived and actually unlocked a Kekkei Genkei in the process due to his actions. Now this could be interesting and actually useful for him. I can't wait to see what you've got to show me now, Naruto-kun. With Naruto. What are you up to, Orochimaru? Naruto thought he knew that the sensei for Ado was Orochimaru from what his teammates had informed him of. Orochimaru had the ability to take the faces of others for his own, coupled with the fact that they share the same chakra signature too, and you get instant identification that this was Orochimaru. He had to inform Oji-san and make sure that he knew. He saw Orochimaru smile at him as well. Just what are you up to, Habi-teme? Knowing who you're talking about, anything is possible, said the giant kitsune in his mind. He could be planning to steal something. He could be planning to kill somebody or destroy something. You just don't know till he does it, because he's done it all from what I understand. Before Naruto could reply, he felt a pulse of yokai from Orochimaru. Cutting off his thoughts, the yokai defiantly did belong to Orochimaru. It now explained that curse seal on Sasuke. He had filled the seal with his corrosive yokai, which he could use to influence a person, but the question was how he got yokai. Did he transform into a demon? Also, how was he able to make the curse seal? The curse seal one I can answer, Naruto-sama, stated Echidna. He beckoned for her to continue. You see, Naruto-sama, when demons started Kekkei Genkei contacts, one was given to an upstart clan whose name has been forgotten through the ages. However, the ability they had been given to them allowed them to transform their bodies almost like a demonic form and shape. It was truly impressive, but from what I heard, they were wiped out by humans that were angry at them for trying to take demonic forms. Even for clan purposes, apparently, someone from their clan must have survived the onslaught, so Orochimaru could have isolated the activation enzymes in their DNA that was used to cause the transformation. Naruto nodded at the answer. If what she said was correct, it was the only logical conclusion, but what did Orochimaru do to his body then? He still needed to figure that out. He sighed and looked at the board for the next matchup. It read, Yamanaka Ino vs Hyuga Hinata. He looked toward Ino, who held a confident look on her face as she made her way down. He then heard Kurenai word of encouragement to Hinata as she made her way down when they were both standing in the middle of the field. He smirked. Oh mama, chick fight, he thought eagerly, pushing the thought of Orochimaru's plans to the back of his mind. At the present moment he prepared to watch to his heart's content. On the battlefield. Are both competitors ready? He received a confident nod and a shaky one. Very well, begin. Ino got into a basic academy taijutsu stance and smiled at Hinata. Get ready, Hinata, because I'm going to give it my all, she said. Hinata just stood there before nodding and slipping into the stance of her family's famous taijutsu, Juken, gentle fist. She activated her infamous dojutsu, eye techniques. Veins appeared all around her eyes. She looked at Ino's and found it to be at low chunin capacity. She also knew that Ino was a Yamanaka, so she had to be careful to make sure that she wasn't able to hit her with a mind destabilization or a takeover jutsu. Hinata was bold enough to move first and attack at her fellow Kunoichi's Tenketsu, chakra points. Hinata was fast, but Ino was slightly faster than her. Ino kicked Hinata in the side to avoid being hit in a Tenketsu, but Hinata had managed to graze one in her leg region before she was kicked out of the way. Hinata skid across the ground as Ino stood across from her, grabbing the leg where she had managed to hit the chakra point. Ino smirked at her. One filled with confidence, she went at Hinata this time and moved to strike. Ino struck at her leg with a quick sweep and Hinata jumped over it. Ino reared her fist back and brought it forward to hit Hinata, only to have to avoid it before being hit in the Tenketsu on her arm. She kept up like this until she finally managed to place a fist into Hinata's gut, forcing her back. Both girls panted and looked at each other before running toward one another, releasing a fury of strikes along the way. In the stands. This is all Hinata-sama has, began Neji in a tone that showed disappointment. She truly is a disgrace. This caught people's attention. Kurenai clenched her fists, ready to go over there and throttle the boy for saying that about her, but was stopped by Guy, who shook his head. She does not deserve the title of heiress. Or Neji was silenced when a pebble hit him in the face. Catching him off guard, everyone looked at the offender and was surprised to find it was Naruto who had thrown it. Neji stood and looked at Naruto with a glare. "How dare you?" Naruto shushed Neji, causing him to become even more upset. "You're interrupting the chick fight. You don't ever interrupt a chick fight." The men's sweat dropped as the temperature in the room dropped and saw most of the women of their group glaring at Naruto. Sasuke was also sending a very subtle glare in his direction as well, and Sakura was even preparing to throttle him but was stopped by what he said next. "However, you must also recognize that Hinata is not weak. She is far from it. She is keeping up with Ino, who is considered to be one of our graduating class's top kunoichi. Not only that, but to see her with such confidence in her eyes, which has been unseen by us before now, is somewhat surprising. So don't call her weak because you know nothing about the situation." Many were surprised by his insight on the situation and realized he was right. This was the first time they had all seen her with such confidence. Not even Kiba, Shino, or Kurenai, her own team members, had seen her this confident before. Of course, they knew why though. Kurenai looked at him in slight surprise from what she had heard around the village. Naruto was a troublemaker and a big idiot for her fellow shinobi. She had heard he had no talent, but here he was, giving an accurate idea of why people should be proud of Hinata because of her growth. It made her respect the boy a bit. "You're quite interesting, Naruto," she thought with a slight smile. "I think that despite this recent change, I'm starting to see why Hinata likes you so much." Neji, however, did not like his response and chose to speak further on the matter. "Yes, I will admit she has improved slightly. However, her younger sibling, Hanabi-sama, is already much stronger than her. She beats Hinata in every spar and this fight is pitiful. Their movements are so slow." Naruto just continued to stare out onto the field and watch the fists of feminine furry fly before replying again. "And everybody evolves at their own pace, Mr. Bruder." He received many snickers for that comment. "I will be the first to admit, their movements are really painfully slow." That stopped his friends who actually thought they were going pretty fast. However, Konoha wasn't built in a day, and neither will their strength as shinobi. As long as they work hard, they'll become strong, and who knows, Neji-san, Hinata may even end up stronger than you. He went back to watching the fight again, missing the many smiles and smirks of approval as well as 2 shouts of, "What a youthful answer," and 1 glare in his direction. "Now, all we need is them to rip each other's tops off and then we'll have a party." He giggled a bit perversely. On the battlefield, Ino and Hinata continued to go at it. Ino would dodge Hinata's strikes a bit roughly while Hinata would dodge Ino's with beauty and grace. Ino weaved around another pair of strikes from Hinata and was able to land a solid punch to her gut while Hinata tapped Tenketsu on her shoulder. They both slide back once again, Hinata grabbing her stomach while Ino held her shoulder. Ino smirked at Hinata. "You've been doing great," she said, "but now I need to finish this. I'm sorry, Hinata." Hinata was curious about what she meant until she came across a thin piece of wires all over her jacket attached with chakra. Holding her in place, she was about to cut them when she noticed fluctuation in the current of the chakra attaching the wire, meaning Ino was about to use a jutsu. She quickly looked toward Naruto, who stood up in the stands and was watching the fight intently. "I want to show Naruto I'm strong." With newfound confidence and greater speed, she ripped off her jacket and threw it to the floor and jumped to the right as Ino had prepared to fire her jutsu. She was left in a tight-fit shirt that showed of the curves she had received from all of her training and nice still-developing chest. "This fight isn't over, Ino-san," she said with confidence and charged in again, faster than before. The young Yamanaka, thinking on her feet, threw an explosive tag on the ground where Hinata was about to charge. It lit up and exploded, forcing Hinata to jump back to avoid being hit. She looked at Ino with a fire in her eyes. Ino was shocked. Hinata never spoke so confidently in her life in the academy. She was always quiet, always standing from afar, and always watching that loser. She was abruptly snapped from her thoughts. She looked up and saw Naruto there. She smirked. "So that's why she's so confident now," she thought gleefully, now with a plan drawn up in her mind. "This can work to my advantage." She was about to say something when Hinata rushed forward with even greater speed than before. She sent a strike toward Ino's pelvis. Ino barely dodged the attack and kept at it, looking for the opportune time to move her plan into action. Finally seeing an opening, she managed to get behind Hinata. She whispered to Hinata, "So this if all for Naruto, eh, Hinata?" Ino felt the young pale-eyed girl tense up and smiled. "Well then," she whispered the rest really quietly. Hinata with each passing second grew redder and redder. She looked toward Naruto and went so red that she looked like she was on fire. Finally, Ino let go and left Hinata dazed. Now, with Hinata's guard down, she could strike Shintenshin no Jutsu, mind-body transfer technique. Suddenly, Ino's body went limp and a couple seconds later, so did Hinata's. A second passed and then Hinata raised her head and smirked. "Infiltration success," the now taken over girl said proudly. She looked at Hayate and said, "I, Hyuga Hinata, forfeit this match." The proctor knew what was going on but nonetheless acknowledged, "Very well, Hyuga Hinata has forfeited the match, therefore, the winner is Yamanaka Ino." Hinata smirked before once again going limp and regaining conciseness again. "What happened?" she asked the proctor. Hayate looked at the girl with some pity before pointing to the now awake Ino. "Ino-san used cough her family's jutsu to take over your mind cough and force you to forfeit the match," the sickly man stated. All of that former confidence left Hinata when she looked at Ino, who looked at her apologetically. "Sorry Hinata," she said, sadness evident in her voice, "but I didn't think I could win, so I exploited your weakness, I'm so sorry." Hinata nodded her head in sadness. "It's okay, Ino-san," she replied sadly as she and Ino walked up the stairs toward their friends. When they got there, they received claps and shouts of "nice job" from their friends Kurenai and Asuma. Each walked to their students. "I'm very proud of you Hinata," she said with a smile. "You've really grown since the beginning of our team." "Good job Ino," congratulated Asuma, not noticing the glare from Kurenai sent in his direction. "We knew you could do it. Admittedly it was a dirty win, but we are shinobi, we fight dirty and without honor. Not saying that is how you should live your life, but you know what I mean." He finally felt Kurenai's glare and noticed it was so strong that it was as if she was trying to burn a hole in the back of his head. The two went back with their fellow sensei. Finally, Naruto came over. Well, nice match. I was in suspense every moment of the way." "Ino, congrats on your win." "In Hinata, even though you didn't win, you kicked ass. I mean, when you threw your coat to the floor and got that determined expression, I thought that I was all over. Great job girls, though next time if it is a chick fight," he leaned in, "remember to rip off each other's tops. You can't have a chick fight without that. You know?" One girl blushed extremely pink from embarrassment and the other had a light pink on her checks but smirked back. "Fine Kitsune-kun," Ino purred, "but then you've got to take it all off." She expected him to sputter or blush, but she received a grin instead. "Of course, it is a fair trade. I think maybe we could have fun with some other activities too." He wiggled his eyebrows suggestively and then he walked away, leaving a sputtering Ino and a still bright red Hinata, one because of the innuendo and the other because she received a compliment from her beloved. Finally, the board landed on another set of names: Inuzuka Kiba versus Uzumaki Naruto. Kiba smirked. "We got an easy one, boy," he shouted as he picked up a Kumaru and jumped over the rails. Naruto just smiled and walked past his fellow genin and the instructors. He was stopped by his teammates. "Good luck, Dobi," Sasuke said with a smirk. Sake had wanted to say something a bit more, but she couldn't. She didn't even know why she said what she had. Maybe it was because he was the first person to know her secret. She didn't really know. "We will be cheering you on," said Sakura with a smile. She had to make an attempt to be nicer now, so he would open up to her and Sasuke. She wanted, for some strange reason, to be accepted by him again. Naruto smirked in return. "Come on, it's Kiba," he said as he walked past them. He stopped though and without turning said, "Thanks though, Sasuke." "Sakura." He walked down the steps. Sakura was happy. He used my name again. She thought there was still no chan suffix, but she began to realize over the past few days that she had hurt him. Now she was determined to get that suffix back, but for reasons she herself could not explain. With Tsunateam, he has a strange aura emanating from him, thought Gaara as he watched the match with slight interest. "Mother is telling me to stay away, that she doesn't want his blood." "Why do you not want his blood, mother?" "Because," a female-sounding voice said in the back of his head, "he has their blood. If he is not friend, he will destroy us." Gaara did not wish to know what she meant for once. With Orochimaru and Auto Team, "Yes Naruto-kun," thought a certain Habi Senin as he watched Naruto walk to his opponent. "Show me your new power." With Iwa Genin, "So it's finally his turn, huh," said Renji with slight disdain. "Is that the one that beat you in the forest?" asked their sensei, a large muscular man with a big gray mustache. "Yes," said Hayate with bristled anger. "He defeated us and almost left us without a scroll." Hayate clamped his hands shut. "He better beat this amateur, because we will get our revenge in the finals." His twin only nodded his head in agreement. Ayane was silent the whole time, but she stared at the field regardless. "Let's see what you've got, Kitsune-kun," she thought as she licked her lips slightly. "On the battlefield. Are both fighters ready?" He received a nod from Kiba. "Hold it," shouted Naruto. Kiba and Hayate stared at him. "I need to warm up first." Without waiting for a reply, he began shadow boxing, throwing jabs left and right. He then did a spin kick. He backflipped finally and then walked back to the proctor. "Okay, now I'm good." Hayate stood there for a moment before he nodded his head. "Very well, you may begin." He jumped back, leaving the two young shinobi to their fight. Kiba stood there cockily. Naruto stood across from him. A smirk embedded on his face and held an air of confidence. Kiba finally broke the silence. "So, you ready to lose, Dobi?" asked Kiba cockily. Naruto smirked in return. "You know, Kiba, you're all talk, you've got nothing to back it up though." He looked at Akumaru. "You also apparently need a puppy to do your fighting for you. You are so tough, Kiba." Kiba growled at him. "He doesn't do my fighting for me, Akumaru. Stay out of this until I tell you to help out, okay?" He received a whimper in response. "What do you mean that we shouldn't fight him?" Another whimper was received from Akumaru. "He is an alpha? Please, I'll show you he isn't." "You should listen to your partner, Kiba," Naruto replied casually, as though he was already bored. "I don't wish to hurt you unless I really have to." Kiba grew angry. "I'll show you, Naruto." He blew through hand signs. Shikyaku no Jutsu. 4 legs technique. Kiba got down on all fours as chakra rose from his body. He rushed at Naruto with great speed, intent on knocking his block off. With Konoha teams, Kakashi, Kurenai began with a slight smirk. "I like the kid, but you know well Naruto can't beat Kiba. He was the dead last of his class." "No really, Kurenai-san. Tell me how you really feel," said someone above the Jonin. Startling all of them, they looked above and saw Naruto hanging down from the ceiling right above them. "Gaki, I thought you were fighting Kiba," stated a startled Asuma. This kid had even snuck up on them. "Jonin, it may be peacetime, but they still shouldn't even be that rusty. Technically, Oyabun is fighting Kiba. I'm just a cage bunshin who was left up here." He looked back at Kurenai. "Now, what was it you said about us losing this fight?" Kurenai looked at him. "You were the dead last of your class, Naruto-san, and while I admit the fact you can use cage bunshin shows some skill, that doesn't mean you can beat him, even if you spammed him with them. So if I can't beat him, then you wouldn't have a problem if we make a bet." "What kind of bet?" The others were shocked. She was going to take the bet of a genin, but said nothing. "If I win, you owe me a favor that is within reason, of course. Maybe something like genjutsu training or something along those lines." "Fair enough. But what if I win? Then I owe you a favor. Hell, I'll even do stuff that isn't within reason. Want me to wait on you hand and foot for a week? You got it. Want me to be your team's punching bag while they train for a few days? You got it. You name it, I'll do it. So, what do you say? We got a deal?" Kurenai thought of the possibilities for a moment. Anything she tells him? This could work to her advantage. She could force him to go on a date with Hinata, which would be a real self-confidence booster for her. Who knows? Maybe he may even actually like it and will begin to date Hinata. Oh, the possibilities she could create with a self-confident Hinata. She smirked and began to shake his outstretched hand. "You've got a deal." She had just made a deal with the devil, literally. The clone above her grinned at her for a moment before letting himself drop next to the 4-sensei and walking to the railing. "Oyabun." She took the bet. This caught the attention of his fellow genin, who were wondering what the bet was but did not ask. On the battlefield. "Really?" Naruto asked. He received a nod and Naruto smirked and looked toward the oncoming Kiba. "Sorry, dog boy, but I have a reason to fight you now." Kiba got within his range. He jumped over Kiba's strike and slammed his foot down into Kiba's back, sending him to the floor and creating cracks from the impact. Naruto jumped to the side and let Kiba get up from the ground as his dog ran to his side. Kiba looked at Akumaru. "Not yet, boy." Kiba, still on all fours, rushed at Naruto again, believing the hit Naruto had managed was just a fluke. He swiped at Naruto, who dodged the attack with what seemed like practiced ease. Kiba continued to strike, but Naruto just kept weaving around the attacks. Kiba jumped back but then ran forward again on all fours, intent on ramming him to make him lose balance and make it easier for him to get a fit. Naruto would have none of it, however, and performed a spin kick to his ribs, sending him skidding back toward his animal partner. Kiba began to recognize that the fight wasn't going in his favor and decided a different approach would be best. He looked down toward the dog and smiled. "Looks like I will need you, bud." The dog hesitated at first, but then nodded. The dog jumped on Kiba's back and after a series of barks, he transformed into an animalistic form of Kiba, Jujin Bunshin beast human clone. The one Kiba jumped off the other and they both ran toward Naruto like bats, or in this case, mutts. Out of hell, Naruto just stood there calmly as they approached. "Oh," he faked horror. "Whatever shall I do? Is there now way to stop these beasts?" Suddenly Naruto's hand went to his holster. "Psyche, got you, dumbass." He drew his revolver and fired 2 rounds of non-elemental chakra bullets. The bullets hit their marks and sent them sailing as they skid across the ground, bruises forming on their cheeks where they had been shot. "What the hell is that?" asked Kiba in slight disbelief. Everyone in the room was listening at this point, curious what the device he used was called. Tenten, being a weapons mistress, was listening especially now. Naruto twirled the weapon on his finger in a showy manner. This, my dear mutt, began Naruto, is called a revolver. It's a special type of weapon that I know how to make when I have the right parts. The type of weapon it's called falls under the category of gun. This gun is called. He stopped spinning it and pointed it at Kiba again. Pyrotekuda. Kiba and Akumaru growled at him. I don't care what it's called, snarled Kiba. Don't think it's going to change the outcome of this match. Let's go, Akumaru. The two Kibas rushed forward again and both went low and attempted to slash at him. Naruto avoided it, spun, and whipped his pistol on top of one Kiba's head, knocking him away while he kicked the other Kiba in the face. The duo was forced away again and looked at each other and nodded. Gatsuga, Fang passing Fang. They jumped and began to spin rapidly, like drills, and sped toward Naruto from different directions. Naruto dodged to the left, avoiding one of the drill-like attacks, then he leaned back to avoid another one. As the attack continued, dust began to obscure his vision. It was getting harder and harder to see, and he couldn't use the Rinnegan without it being reveled, so he had to do the next best thing. He released a blast of wind chakra all around him and cleared the dust. Just to see Kiba and Akumaru come around again from separate sides, he dropped the gun and held out his hands and grabbed their hands, stopping the drills and shocking everybody. Naruto held them sideways in the air, like their weight was nothing. Kiba and Akumaru were struggling to get away. You know, Kiba, you weren't very good for entertainment and you know what that means. He spun his foot and kicked up the gun into the air as he threw them above him. If you have no entertainment value, then get the fuck out. He grabbed the gun and jumped up to near impossible heights. He performed a hand seal, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He created two clones, who kicked his two opponents back toward the ground. He then fired fire chakra bullets at them, which scorched their bodies. Then he fired lightning bullets at them, sending their bodies into spasms. Then he fired wind chakra bullets, shredding their clothes and gave them deep cuts. Finally, he charged two bullets with demonic energy and chakra. He smirked. Jackpot. He shouted. He fired the two blasts of multicolored energy directly at them. They hit them and exploded, sending them rocking faster to the ground. Naruto landed before them, however, and turned around when they hit the floor. Naruto Renden. Akuma no Fukushu, Naruto combo. Devil's Revenge. Dust clogged their vision, and when it cleared they saw Akumaru had returned to his true form and was knocked out. Kiba was trying to stand up but kept falling back to the cracked floor where he had landed. He was glaring at Naruto's back. He continued trying to stand when he heard Naruto's voice ring out. Damn, you're still awake, he said without turning. Don't get up, man. I don't want to hurt you any further. Kiba growled and with his remaining strength got up and ran toward Naruto. Naruto turned only to get slashed across the face with a clawed hand, knocking his head up. Kiba smirked, believing he had won, only to get surprised when Naruto's face, which had his scratch marks on it, came down and he grinned at Kiba. Nice shot, Kiba, he said, grin never leaving his face, but he brought his fist back. Not good enough. He clocked Kiba and sent him spiraling to the ground, knocking him out on contact. The proctor rushed forward and looked at Kiba. He checked Kiba's pulse, confirming he was alive but knocked out. He stood up and looked at Naruto with a bit of shock at the match before looking to the general crowd. The winner is Uzumaki. Actually, Naruto cut him off. It's Sparta. Naruto, I forgot to tell you before, but I changed my last name. Hayate nodded in confirmation. Very well, the winner is Sparta. Naruto. He turned toward the medic squad. Get him to the medical wing. The squad rushed over as Naruto walked away, ignoring the stunned group. With the Hokage. So, this is the power of Naruto-kun's new Kekkei Genkai, the old Kage thought with shock. There is so much power leaking off of him in battle. If he learns to control it in the Rinnegan, he will be incredible. With the sound Genin, I see, thought Orochimaru with curiosity, so this is Naruto-kun's power. Funny thing is that he was even holding back as well. He is a magnificent specimen. Yes, he will do nicely. He giggled quietly to himself. With Suna siblings, so, Tamari said with a shocked expression, this is Naruto-san's strength. He seems pretty strong. She looked toward her brother. But this feeling I'm getting from him, it's almost like Gaara's. Yeah, commented Baki, the team's sensei, with a small frown. He might become trouble in the near future, however. Meanwhile, Gaara was conversing with his own beast. Mother, he has such strength he could prove my existence. No girl, replied the great-tailed beast. He is incredibly strong. I can feel it. Do not fight him. Child spill other blood, but not his. Gaara did not reply. His mother thought that boy was too strong for him. With Iwa Genin, I see why you want to beat him, commented the team's sensei. Hi, sensei, stated Renji, his eyes never leaving Naruto's walking form. If he does pass his second fight, I will train you all harder than before to beat him. Thank you, sensei, said Hayate as he too stared at the boy. My, aren't you strong, Kitsune-kun? Thought Ayane with a grin. But you're still hiding your true strength, aren't you? With the Konoha Genin, Naruto stopped in front of Kurenai and looked at her. I'll be collecting on that favor eventually, just so you know. He walked toward his fellow Genin, leaving a still shocked Kurenai and the other Jonin to their thoughts. Kakashi's kid is incredible, thought Asuma, his cigarette almost falling to the floor from what he had just witnessed. I even saw him use wind chakra to clear the smoke a bit. It was a small fraction of wind chakra's capabilities, but still, a Genin who knows nature manipulation is a dangerous Genin. Kakashi's student is so youthful, thought Kakashi's eternal rival, Guy. His speed is maybe just a bit slower than Lee's with his weights on. I think I saw a gravity seal on his coat, though could that mean that he is faster than he lets on? Naruto, thought Kakashi, eyes still on his book. Your new abilities will only increase your strength. I could tell you were going to be someone strong before, but now, I just don't know. Worst is that I had nothing to do with it. Kiba was one of the best taijutsu users in his class, thought Kurenai, still in shock. Naruto just beat him like he was nothing. He maybe had a weapon, but even before then, and to be able to just grab Kiba like that during his technique, I don't even think Guy could do that. Then she remembered something. Kuso, I just lost a bet to him too. What is he going to make me do? He said it would be something within reason, so he better not go back on his word? All while they were thinking this, Naruto had returned to his fellow Genin. They all looked at him, but before any could comment, he was blindsided by Tenten. Naruto-san, she all but shouted, please, let me see your weapon. Which one, babe? I've got a few, he said, motioning to his holster, then the black case on his back, and then to his pants. The females in the group blushed at the innuendo. Sasuke found it hard to keep down a blush, himself. Stupid horny idiot, thought Sake in anger for reasons she herself could not explain. Tenten regained her composure, ignoring his insinuation. I want to see this thing you call a revolver, Naruto-san, she said. Naruto nodded and quickly drew it and spun it around before he held it by the handle. Everyone looked at the weapon curiously, but Tenten looked at it in awe. Naruto-san, you realize this could change the shinobi world, right? Naruto looked at Tenten. Ten-chan. She blushed at the suffix due to how smoothly he said it. This weapon design is from the old world anyway. I just modified the design to use chakra instead of lead for the ammunition. The old world, thought the group curiously. Hinata slowly walked up to Naruto, a cream jar in her hands. Here, Naruto-kun. She offered it to him. It's so, Mimed, Ikal ointment for that cut Kiba-kun gave you? Naruto looked at the jar before handing it back to her, showing everybody the side of his face had already healed. Sorry, Hina-chan, he said causally, but one of my Kekkei Genkei's abilities gives me an amazing healing factor, so I don't need it. He noticed her down look. Thank you for the offer though, Hina-chan. Her face brightened and blushed brightly. It was by then his friend Shikamaru had decided to take the floor. What was that, Naruto? Asked Shikamaru. Whatever do you mean, Shika? He feigned in ignorance. I believe what Shikamaru-san means, Naruto-san, began Shino, is that in the academy you were the worst student. Your taijutsu was inefficient, your ninjutsu was shabby at best, and you could not perform any genjutsu. It is illogical to suggest that one could improve in leaps and bounds like this in just 3 months, and from what we had heard from the others before the Forest of Death, you had not been at this level. You might have been able to beat Kiba-san then with your skill set, but not to the point of thrashing. He adjusted his glasses slightly. Not only that, but with your change in appearance and slightly in personality, one can conclude that your Kekkei Genkei made great improvements to your body. What, however, I cannot be sure of without confirmation. Naruto looked at them all, knowing each one wanted answers. Not only that, but Sake had asked for some answers anyway. Now she could get some, but in front of everybody, so he didn't need to repeat himself to every person who asked. Fine, he said, I'll tell you all a bit about it. The Genin, Team 9 included, and the Jonin leaned inward, intent on hearing his answer. Listen up, because I'll only explain this once. The Kekkei Genkei I possess is called Akuma Soru. One of the abilities it grants me is reflexes, speed, and strength 3 times faster than that of a normal human's after initial activation, in which case it can continue to get better with training. The other ability, as I've just showed you, is called Akuma no Kai. It gives me an advanced healing factor that is beyond anyone you will ever encounter. There are other abilities, but you'll see as we go along. Is that really all you're going to tell us right now? Asked Shikamaru. Yup. Naruto chirped almost happily. I'll only tell you more if you beat me in a fight. He grinned at Shikamaru. But that would be just too troublesome for you, wouldn't it? He could hear the pineapple-haired boy groan something about troublesome silver-haired bastards. which caused his grin to widen. Sasuke smirked at Naruto. "Don't get cocky, Naruto," he stated, "because if I fight, you will lose faster than how you beat Kiba." Inside, however, Sake knew that he was strong and it infuriated her to no end. True. Unlocking her Sharingan, Mirror Wheel Eye, had helped her strength greatly. She could predict the enemy's movements without a second thought. Not only that, but since Kakashi had sealed her curse seal during Naruto's albescence, she could use her Sharingan to watch the battle. However, when she tried reading his movements, she could barely see it, yet alone predicted it was annoying her to no end. "Sure you will, Teme. Sure you will." They stopped arguing when they heard Hayate call for the next match to be brought up on the board. Akado Yoroi vs Rock Lee. Lee let out a cheer of prevailing youth, and told Sakura to watch him before running down to face his opponent. Said opponent just walked down to the battleground. They stood in front of each other with Lee bouncing around, visibly excited while his opponent stood there calmly. "Are both opponents ready?" asked Hayate for the 5th time that day. Yoroi nodded while Lee's reply was more than needed. "My youthful opponent, let us have a fair match." Lee gave a nice guy pose and his teeth sparkled brilliantly. Lee was about to ramble on when he was interrupted by Hayate, who asked if he could start the match. Lee blushed in embarrassment and nodded. "Now that we can start," said Hayate while throwing a glance at the still happy Lee. "Fight." Lee rushed in and performed a series of kicks to his opponent. Konoha Senpu, Leaf Whirlwind. Yoroi managed to dodge the high kicks from the attacks but then was subjected to the powerful low kicks. Lee's final kick sent him flying. Cage Buyo, Shadow of the Dancing Leaf. Lee appeared under the flying Yoroi and kicked him in the back, sending him up into the air. Lee planted his feet on the ground and quickly jumped up into the air and appeared above Yoroi. He flipped and kicked downwards, smashing his leg into Yoroi's exposed stomach region and sent him crashing to the ground. Yoroi hit the ground with great force and dust spread over the field. Lee landed feet first and walked over to inspect the ground where his opponent had landed. The dust was beginning to settle when a hand shot out and grabbed Lee's leg. Yoroi, while getting up, threw Lee to the side and ran toward him and pinned him to the floor. "You fool!" Yoroi practically shouted, a bit of blood from the previous attack dripping down from under his mask. "You may have gotten those hits in, but now you're trapped." He began trying to pull chakra from Lee's body. "I have the ability to absorb chakra. You won't be able to use chakra to speed your movements anymore." "Sorry my friend," Lee shouted back, not even struggling under his opponent's grip, "but I can't use chakra." He kicked up and sent Yoroi rocking into the air. The green-clad shinobi then pushed up and crouched down before jumping off into the air after Yoroi. He got above Yoroi, his heel placed above his opponent's head. "I will become a great shinobi without the use of chakra. Sorry my youthful friend, but I cannot lose to you today." He sent his heel down and smacked Yoroi in the face, sending him crashing face first into the pavement. Hayate walked up to him and lifted up Yoroi's head only to find him unconscious. He waved the medics over and looked toward the excited Lee. "The winner is Rock Lee," he said. "Yosh!" he shouted with great enthusiasm. He jumped up to the side near where his team was and was greeted by his enthusiastic mentor. "I did it, Guy-sensei, I won." "Yes, my youthful student," Guy said, suddenly grasping Lee's shoulders. "Your youthful fires have shown amazing passion. I am proud to call you my student." Lee's eyes watered. "Guy-sensei," he said passionately. Guy returned his student's gaze. "Lee," he replied with equal passion. "Guy-sensei. Lee, Guy-sensei, Lee." They hugged one another, the air around them distorted to give the scenery a look of a beach at sunset, the ocean waves behind them swaying slowly. If it weren't for the two men in green training uniforms hugging one another, it would be a beautiful sight. Sadly, the two men ruined it. The scene had led to various reactions around the room. Lee's teammates cringed at the sight of the ability. Despite seeing it almost every day, it was just something they would most likely never be used to. Team Kurenai, or at least the members present, wondered how such an evil genjutsu could be created. Hinata had tried activating her Byakugan to see through the technique, but for some reason could not and only managed to receive an intensified version. In return, Shino tried to have his bugs eat away at the chakra for the technique, only to find that none was being used. Their sensei, however, was incredibly frustrated at failing to dispel the genjutsu. Team Asuma's remaining members looked at the technique in horror, Shikamaru actually thinking it would be more troublesome to let go on, trying to figure out how to break it. The teams from Suna, Iwa, and Otto, with the exception of Gaara and Orochimaru, managed to share a single praying thought. Please don't let there be any more Konoha shinobi like this. The Hokage and his advisors, as well as those who knew Guy well, kept their composure despite seeing the monstrosity before them. Team 7's reaction was not gotten to due to the fact that a loud bang resounded across the room. A chakra bullet struck the background, destroying it like glass. Pieces of said glass then fell on top of Guy and Lee, who were knocked from their hugging session. They looked and saw Naruto's gun drawn and his eyes twitching dangerously. An evil aura appeared around him. "Look," he began calmly, "I really don't care what you do in private." However, his eyes glowed dangerously, actually eliciting a gulp from the two taijutsu users. "If I ever see that again, and it is not a pair of hot chicks instead of you clowns, I will end you. Do you understand?" They nodded their heads in confirmation. The normally happy taijutsu users still shaking, he turned back to everyone else, who looked shocked for what felt like 100th time that day. He shrugged nonchalantly about the situation. "What? I really hate the genjutsu. It's like the second time I saw it this week." Everyone's sweat dropped, but nodded slowly and looked back toward the board to see the next match setup, not wanting to question a good deed such as his. The board read, Shinichi Ayane vs Haruno Sakura. Ayane smiled and jumped over the railing, landing on the floor with a loud thump. Sakura on the other hand told Sasuke, and surprisingly Naruto, to watch her. She then ran down the stairs and made it to center field. Hayate confirmed that both opponents were ready before beginning the match. Sakura made the first move by pumping chakra to her feet and releasing it on impact. Speeding up her run, she pushed her fist back and brought it straight forward for a punch, only for her opponent to sidestep it and kick her straight in the ribs, sending her sliding across the ground until she held her hand out to stop herself. She stood and held her side, still feeling the kick Ayane had on her ribs. Ayane began to laugh at the girl's plight. "Kami-sama," she said, calming down from her laughing fit. "Are all you genin Konohakunochi this bad? I mean, the match between that pale-eyed girl and dumb blonde was pathetic." She ignored the indignant cry of, "Hey," from said girl before continuing, "I would think that someone from the studs team," she pointed at Naruto, "would be so much better than this." Sakura growled, "And what would you know about Naruto?" Ayane smirked. "Well, my team and I fought him in that stupid forest. He managed to beat me and my team." She stopped and blushed before finishing with, "While naked, and let me tell you, he's well endowed." A cry of, "What?" was heard around the room, in the stands, with Naruto. Naruto felt everyone's eyes on him, including the two competitors in the arena. He smiled. "Hey," he put his hands up in a placating manner, "in my defense, those guys thought it was a good idea to fight me while I was washing up in the river." Sasuke then growled out, "Then why didn't you wear your boxers in the river?" Naruto looked at him. "Well, how else am I supposed to get clean? Can't do that in my boxers now, can I?" He noticed everyone's eyes still on him and smirked. "But yeah, anyway, I will confirm I beat their asses butt naked without weapons." "And what a fine ass you have," he heard Ayane shout from the battlefield below. He looked down at her. "And what gives with you? Not that I don't mind, but you weren't this flirty in the forest of death." She smiled saucily at him. "Because we were trying to kill each other, we aren't now, stud." He then tried to gauge the rest of the reactions in the room. Asuma and Shikamaru were actually gawking at the idea. Asuma because he thought that was somewhat badass to fight while naked, and Shikamaru because he was wondering how much more troublesome Naruto could get. Ino was blushing madly, repeating, "I love Sasuke-kun," over and over again to drown out what she had just heard. Team Kurenai seemed to be handling it better. Shino was standing motionlessly, but if one looked close enough they would be able to see his eye-twitching. Kurenai's face, despite being an adult, was also slightly blushing. Hinata was surprisingly growling at the Iwaku no Ichi below. The normally bashful and quiet Hinata was growling at the female Iwanin below. When the hell did that start, and why the hell was she being overprotective of? Fucky was an idiot. Revelation of the century, Gaki, snickered the giant kitsune that resided in his body. "Bite my shinny metal ass, fuzz face," replied Naruto. In an alternate universe, a robot in a certain future stopped drinking his beer and became enraged. "Some bastard is stealing my catchphrase." He threw his bottle at the closest thing to him, which happened to be his best friend Fry. Returning to Naruto, "In all seriousness, you silver-haired dolt, how in the hell did you not notice this sooner? Really, was his container that much of an idiot before the transformation?" "Well, excuse me for not noticing how a girl felt when I was stupid. I would like to take this opportunity to blame you." "Me? What are you blaming me for?" "Because your damn seal impeded on my thinking capabilities," he responded simply, and then cut the connection between him and the demon. He went back to thinking. "Damn. Now that I actually think about it, it explains why I always felt a pair of eyes on me when I was walking home from the academy." He was struck by another revelation. "Oh my god. She blushes all the time because she's in at my tool with those dang X-ray eyes of hers. That perverted girl." He looked at her figure as she continued growling at the kunoichi below. "Damn girl probably hides a nice figure under that coat." Great, that was another thing to put on his to-do list. He continued gauging reactions. Team Guy had varied reactions, some of which had managed to freak him out. He saw that white-eyed bastard, Neji's, eyebrows raise and his eyes widen. Tenten was blushing while talking about weapons. He was somewhat hoping it wasn't his weapon, because apparently that girl is obsessed with interesting weapons, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on one's perspective. He was horrified when Guy and Lee decided it was a challenge of manliness and promised to run laps around the village while naked to catch up to his youthful skill level. That one was going to come back to haunt him, he just knew it. He saw that the Suna and remaining members of the Auto group only looked shocked, nothing more really. The Iwanin were of course growling at him in anger, but that was a giving, although their sensei was chuckling somewhat about the fact that his students were beaten by a naked boy. The Hokage was giggling perversely while some of the other shinobi up there were chuckling. He noticed that crazy snake lady was looking at him with bedroom eyes, which caused him to smirk slightly. He could also hear his sensei actually giggling behind him. He finally looked at his male teammate only to see her unhappy as well. He, too, was glaring at the Iwanin. If looks could kill, he believed Ayane would be extra crispy from that kind of glare. He smirked as Sasuke. He was beginning to think he could use this as dirt for later against him, should the need ever arise. On the field, you know, Ayane said to Sakura in a pondering-like pose, if I had to estimate, he's probably around 6 or 7 inches. Sakura blushed in embarrassment. And he's not even fully grown yet too. He'll probably be around. She was cut off by an angry Sakura. I don't want to know my teammate's size, she roared while blushing. She clumsily leapt forward to attack her with a swift punch to her stomach area. Ayane grabbed the younger pink-haired girl's arm with her hand. Stopping that attack, she then delivered a swift uppercut to Sakura's jaw, sending her into the air. Sakura, even though she was in a great deal of pain, recovered in the air and tried to use it to her advantage by firing several explosive tag kunai at Ayane. Ayane avoided the kunai and the bombs as they went off, creating a large amount of dust. Sakura then landed in the dust and used it to her advantage. Ayane began to caustically wait until the dust cleared. She saw something in the dust sparkle and avoided the 3 kunai that had been thrown at her by her pink-haired opponent. She looked at the wall only to find that they had exploding tags as well. She cursed as she avoided the explosion that caused part of the wall to crumble. She saw something running from the dust and 3 Sakura emerged running toward her. Ayane simply put her hand in a ram seal and broke the simple Bunshin no Jutsu, clone technique. The multiple illusionary Sakuras shimmered from existence, and as the dust cleared, Sakura was not there. She felt a presence behind her and ducked as a fist flew overhead. She grappled the pink-haired Kunoichis and lifted her over her shoulder and gripped her by the legs, her head facing toward the ground. Well, it was fun, Pinky, she taunted slightly, but I've got to end this. She let her feet fall out from under her and her butt, along with Sakura's head, slammed into the ground. Tsukarakarasha, Skullcrusher. After Sakura's head hit the floor, Ayane let go of Sakura's legs, allowing Sakura's body to fall to the hard ground. Ayane stood up as Hayate walked over and checked Sakura's pulse to see if she was alive. She was very much indeed alive. He waved over the medics and walked to Ayane. This match is over. The winner is Shinichi Ayane. She winked in Naruto's direction before walking back to her team. With Naruto. Well, the former blonde sighed with slight sarcasm. Didn't see that one coming. He turned to Kakashi, whose face was surprisingly out of its book. Naruto feigned a look of shock. Oh my Kami-sama, we're all going to die. The end of days is upon us. Kakashi-sensei's face isn't buried in his porn book. We are all doomed. Kakashi looked like his bottom lip was sitting out under his mask and gained a fake tear in his one uncovered eye. Hurtful, he said in a comically before becoming serious. You knew this was going to happen, didn't you, Naruto? He saw Naruto nod his head. Then why did you let her go through with it? Naruto looked at Kakashi with slightly apathetic expression. Kakashi, he began seriously. There are a few reasons why I did not say anything. 1. She probably would not have listened from what I could tell, even if I spent little time with the team since the Forest of Death. She wishes to prove that she is not useless, and that is very admirable. And 2, by fighting a strong Kunoichi, she will now be able to see what a true female nin should be capable of at this age and strive to become like that. Kakashi was surprised at the stoic look Naruto had and was beginning to think his student was bipolar, considering he has gone from silly to serious at the drop of a hat. It was incredibly weird seeing him like this, because before Naruto's emotions were so easy to read and predict, now it was sporadic. However, Kakashi knew he could not deify Naruto's logic on the subject. Sakura had the possibility to become a great Kunoichi. She took to tree walking and other chakra control exercises like a fish out of water. A bet. Her chakra reserves were a bit smaller than the others, but she had slowly been expanding them. He knew that this match, however, would be a good wake-up call and show her that she needed to train harder to become stronger. Both silver-haired individuals stopped conversing when he saw the board light up again. Abumi Zaku vs Hyuga Neji. Kakashi and Naruto looked to see Neji smirking slightly as he walked down. passing Hinata coldly as she tried to tell him good luck. This action caused Naruto to frown slightly. This asshole just walked past her casually even when she did it to try and be nice. He thought impassively at the pale-eyed boy's disregard for his cousin's attempts to make amends with him for whatever reason. He didn't know Hinata too well like he knew everyone else. He usually hung with Kiba, Shoji, and Shikamaru. He knew about Sakura and Ino because he had liked Sakura and thought it would be good to gain her praise if he knew Ino as well. Shino and he had conversed once in a while, and Sasuke just ignored everybody. He remembered making a couple attempts to talk to Hinata, but she would always blush and then pass out despite his new personality and character traits. He really didn't get it, however. He knew Hinata was a good person at least, so Neji shouldn't have brushed it off so casually. He also noticed Kurenai bristle with anger, and it made him question the relationship between the student and sensei. During this entire exam, he always saw the red-eyed beauty trying to help Hinata with her courage issue. Sensei usually just taught the young genin basic shinobi characteristics up until they were strong enough to move to the next level, so you never really saw them interfere with someone's personal problems before. Or it could be that Kakashi just doesn't care and leaves them in the dust. He didn't know which, to be honest. He noticed the match was about to start and pushed the thoughts to the back of his mind. On the battlefield, the two stared each other down, almost not even noticing that the match had already started. Zaku smirked at the Hyuga. "You know, I've wanted to fight you since we got out of that creepy forest," said Zaku sadistically. Neji kept a serious expression, however, almost ignoring his opponent's words. "Your fate is to lose this match," he remarked stoically. "I will give you this chance to concede to me. If not, you will find that fate has dealt you a rather unfair hand." Zaku growled in annoyance. "What's with this fate bullshit?" He lifted up the arm not in the sling. "I can beat you with one good arm." Zankuha, decapitating airwaves. He fired a highly pressurized blast of air at Neji, who promptly avoided the blast and with great speed, got behind Zaku with his Byakugan active. "You should have given in," he stated simply. "However, it is too late because you're in my range of deviation." Hake Rokuhuion Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms. He smacked Zaku twice with his palms, knocking him forward. 2 strikes. He appeared before Zaku and hit him again twice more. 4 strikes. Zaku was forced backward and appeared. Neji appeared again by his side. He hit Zaku 8 times, 8 strikes. His movements increased pace, and before Zaku could be forced away, he appeared at his other side. He hit another 8 times, 16 strikes. He forced Zaku away and appeared before him to hit him 16 times, 32 strikes. He hit his opponent backward and appeared behind him. "This is the end for you." He hit Zaku 32 more times, 64 strikes. Zaku was pushed forward, skidding across the ground until he fell to the floor. Hayate went and checked Zaku's pulse. He called in the medics, which he had been doing a lot that day. He stood up and addressed the audience. "The winner is Hyuga Neji." The room was silent as Neji walked away, mostly because he had defeated his opponent so quickly. The match was about 30 seconds in total. "With Suna team, this tournament really does have some monsters," commented Tamari, a bit shaken about how a member of the joint Suna Auto invasion force was defeated so easily. She was really starting to have some second thoughts at this point in time. Konoha Shinobi were dominating in their matches. A bet even when they fought each other they were still strong. However, despite Neji having a faster time, she could tell Naruto was still far more dangerous. These facts were beginning to unnerve her. She then looked toward Gaara and silently wondered what he was thinking through all of this. Was he enjoying the bloodlust? When she thought about it further, however, she really didn't want to know, but was about to find out because the next match was Shina Hayate versus Sabaku Gaara. She looked at Gaara only to notice that he had disappeared in a swirl of sand and appeared down on the field next to his opponent. On the battlefield. "This kid is crazy," thought Hayate with some lose of his former bravado. It was just when he was looked into his opponent's eyes. He saw nothing. There was no life in them, no soul, only unbridled fury. Regardless, it's probably just nothing. Yup, that's it. Regaining some of his former confidence, he smiled at Gaara. "Are you ready to lose, Suna chump?" Gaara just continued staring at him. A permanent frown etched upon his features. This boy was mocking him. Yet he was not worthy food for mother. He wanted to give something that would satisfy his mother's cravings. That silver-haired boy, Naruto, would be a great satisfaction. He would be a worthy way to prove his existence. Yet, he was not allowed to touch him because mother said not to. Very well then, if he was not allowed to touch him, then he would use this boy as a sacrifice for his mother. The proctor came forth. "Are both fighters ready?" He received 2 nods. "Very well then, let the match begin." Finally, Hayate shouted as he ran forward. Running like a bear, Kuma no Torianfu, bear's triumph. He tried to ram his shoulder into Gaara, only to run into a wall of sand. Said sand then slapped him away from his opponent, forcing him to skid across the ground. He ended up stopping and glared at his opponent, who stood there with sand slowly swirling around him. What the hell is this? My sand. The other boy replied in monotone. He held out his hand and the sand swirled in front of his hand in a streak-like form. Suna shuriken, sand shuriken. Spinning clots of sand were sent from the streak at an incredible pace toward Hayate, who looked at him in surprise. This guy can control sand almost unnaturally, he thought frantically. Could he be like that silver-haired bastard? Is he a Jinchuriki as well? The academy taught us extensively about the abilities of Jinchuriki from other nations. Should we run into them? Suna has Shukaku, which gives their container absolute sand control, Kuso. Hayate, noticing that his thinking had made it impossible for him to get out of the way in time even with his speed, flipped through hand seals. Doden. Duroku Geshi, Earth Release, Earth Shore Return. He slammed his hands on the ground and channeled Earth Chakra, causing a large piece of the stone arena floor to rise in front of him. The shuriken hit the wall, impacting it hard but not breaking through. After the barrage was finished, he kicked the wall in front of him. Doden. Shikyu Shato, Earth Release, Earth Shot. Clumps of rocks were fired from the wall toward Gaara, who stood there impassively. Is he not even going to move? When the rocks were about to impact, Gaara's sand moved to protect him, forming a small barrier to block attacks sent by Hayate. The shots of rock did not come close to piercing the shield at all, causing Hayate to grimace. That sand moves around him like a fucking shield, Hayate thought while shocked. How the hell am I supposed to fight a guy that can defend from every attack? He noticed Gaara's sand breaking down the rocks into smaller pieces to become sand like grains. Shit. He can even break down rock to become sand. All I have are earth techniques and my taijutsu? I can't hit him with either unless I come up with something. Hayate was forced to jump away when he noticed some sand trying to grab him by the feet. In the air, he flashed through hand seals and when he landed called out, Iwa Bunshin no Jutsu, rock clone technique. He spewed rocks from his mouth, which conformed to take his shape, and slapped 2 explosive tags onto their backs. He sent them running toward Gaara, himself running right behind them with a small explosive tag. Kunai prepared. The 3 jumped from side to side, avoiding attempts to crush him as he went in. When they were finally in range, they struck. Gaara put up a shield to block the attack. The first one impacted his shield and exploded, which caused some of his sand to be removed during the impact, creating a small gap in the defense. The second one came right after it and exploded, making the gap widen. The gap was about to close up when a small kunai with an explosive tag slipped through the shield. When it closed, a small explosion occurred inside Gaara's shield of sand, causing everyone to wonder what was going on in there. With Suna team, how did an attack like that get past Gaara's shields? Tamari, while she may not show it as much for certain reasons, truly does love her brother. The fact something got past his defense like that scared her. More experienced shinobi they had fought had never even tried an attack like that on Gaara. Baki just said nothing and continued to stare at the sand shield. The ultimate defense was not as strong as he had thought. Consecutive blasts at the same point in the shield could apparently create a small gap. Those explosions would blast away some of the sand and create a small gap. A second explosion would widen that gap enough for something small like a kunai to get in. It was a good plan, but they didn't know about Gaara's second defense. With Konoha teams, he got him, shouted Ino, who locked in shock at what was occurring. You're wrong, Ino-chan, said Naruto with a slightly frowning at what had happened. Those listening turned to Naruto. And why is that, Naruto? Asked Asuma, who was convinced that the attack had gotten the red-haired boy. Because, Asuma-sensei, he is like me, the silver-haired boy replied grimly, shocking the adult Jonin who knew what he meant while his fellow genin wondered what he was saying. Naruto just continued on by saying, if he is like me, that won't bring him down. On the field, everyone watched as the cracked a bit before falling apart, revealing Gaara to the world, except he looked different as patches of his skin and hair were turning into sand and were falling off of his body. Eventually, the rest of his skin turned to sand and fell off, revealing something shocking. Gaara's face and body gained a slightly feminine look and his hair was a bit longer, whereas instead of being a mop, it fell down straight to the middle of his neck. He also had a set of B-cup breasts on his chest, meaning that he was in fact a she was in fact and surprisingly cute. To top it all of that off, she had a psychopathic smile on her face while she was staring at Hayate. With Suna team, Tamari and Baki stared in shock. Gaara was a girl. How is he, no, she, a girl? How had they not noticed? Did the case cage know this fact, or would he be shocked as well? There were so many questions running through their minds that they could not think straight. With Konoha teams, okay. This has to be like Mindfuck Week, or something, Naruto thought in some shock. This is like the Haku thing all over again, except instead of the girl being a guy, the guys turn out to be the girls and smoking hot ones at that. I swear to Kami-sama, if it turns out more of the guys I know are girls, the fucker who made this fan fiction is going to die. That's right, he broke the fourth wall. Want to fight about it? Down on the field, Hayate was staring at his fellow redhead in shock. This guy was in fact a girl. To add to the situation, said girl did not have a scratch on her. Only one phrase came to mind to describe the situation. What the fuck? Those were his only thoughts as sand snuck up on his body and began to cover him. As the girl held out her hand, her smile widened, causing the boy to panic somewhat as he struggled to break free from the sand that now surrounded him. I've got you now, she screamed psychotically. Sabaku Q, sand binding coffin. The sand finally wrapped completely around him, leaving his head out in the open. You know, mother only wants the blood of the strong, but she says you will suffice. Hayate, knowing he was beaten and about to die, called out to the sickly proctor. I give, he shouted frantically. I give up. The shinobi in the room were about to move in and stop them, but sand began to cover the floor to get to the boy and get the girl to stop. They would have to risk their lives. The proctor tried calling out to the girl. Gaara of Suna, if you do not cease and desist, we will be forced to drop you from the exams and possibly use lethal force. He shouted to her. The girl, however, would not budge. Her sand was across the floor. She knew there was nothing they could do. With Iwa team, no, Hayate, shouted Renji as he began to worry for his brother's life. He saw the memories he and his brother shared as children. He saw them playing and training with their father. He remembers them both standing at their father's grave for hours after his funeral. When he died from illness, he began to remember the promise they made to each other about becoming strong together. He prepared to jump over the railing to get to his brother, only to be stopped by his sensei. Stay, he commanded in a sad tone. If you go, that girl will only get more blood. That sand down there will ensnare anyone that jumps onto that floor, and since it covers the entire floor, you wouldn't be able to get to him. Renji's eyes widened. His sensei was right. There was nothing he could do to stop the girl. Hayate was a goner. What would his mother say when he returned home after the exams without his brother? He wished, could only hope there was a way to stop this, to avoid finding out. With Suna team, stop Gaara, shouted Tamari. However, it fell on deaf ears. If her brother, no, sister, killed that boy, then that would mean trouble for Suna. Their team could be removed from the exams and the plan would be ruined. Baki knew this as well, but did not voice it. He knew that once Gaara had gotten into this state, there was nothing they could to stop it unless the case cage interfered, and he was not here. That boy was going to die and their standing would be compromised. With Konoha teams, Naruto knew the situation was bad and that he had to stop it. While he didn't like Hayate, he knew that Hayate didn't deserve to die like this. Kakashi, Sasuke, he called out to the two, catching their attention. Move away, I can save him, but I need some space to prepare. Kakashi, who was still wondering about his student's new abilities, moved out of the way as told. Sasuke, even though knowing the situation was dire, did so reluctantly. The Konoha teams, who were in range and heard what he had said, looked at the boy as well, waiting to see what he would do. Kyuubi, I need your help, he thought while reconnecting to the giant kitsune. His devil arm spirit nodded in agreement. Yes, it seems you do. Why does that woman always have to fuck with her container's mind? Don't know, but it sounds like a personal problem. He held his hands out and called forth his devil arm. Kyuubi. Flames slid down his shoulders and Kyuubi's chakrams appeared in his hands, shocking those around him. Not caring if anyone saw at this point, Naruto ran to the rail and jumped off the edge. He shouted over to Hayate, if you want to live, close your eyes. Seeing the boy do so frantically, he threw his chakrams toward the boy. Jigoku no Arashi, Hellstorm. The chakrams circled the boy in a pillar of fire as Gaara attempted to crush him with her hand. Finally, the chakrams came back and revealed that Hayate was now trapped in glass instead of sand. Hayate, deciding that he would use the chance Naruto had made for him, broke free from the glass and jumped toward the wall he was closest to. Some of the sand covering the field attempted to capture him again, but was stopped by Naruto's chakrams by cutting through the sand, turning the particles connecting the sand to glass. Finally, he made it up into the safety of the stands and ran toward his team. Naruto, however, fell to the ground after he had made it to the stands. Sand tried to approach him, but he spun the bladed discs around him, creating a huge whirlwind of fire around him and stopping it from advancing. Naruto, now knowing his position was safe because of the small ring of fire around him due to that last fire attack, looked at the Gaara, who was now growling at him. Gaara, the proctor told you to stop, he berated in a mock scolding tone. He then smiled cheerfully at her. Please remember to stop when told, okay? Sparta, she growled out, her sand that was once spread out around the field retreating. Mother wants your blood, Sparta. Yeah, well, the only way your mother is getting my blood is if she is a hot MILF, then I'll consider giving her my blood for her sick fetishes. Gaara stopped raging for a moment to look confused. MILF, she began, what is a MILF? Naruto looked at her before bursting out into laughter. He then suddenly had to dodge a torrent of sand coming toward him. He looked to see Gaara blushing slightly with an angry look on her face. Mother told me to kill you for being perverted, she said with slight anger. She was about to attack him again but was stopped by some of the Jonin in the room. The proctor stood in front of her. You are lucky that Naruto-san stopped you from killing that kid, else you would have been disqualified, he said as sharply as he could despite the cough. Now please, return to your team. Gaara's hand twitched as if contemplating to adhere to his order. She looked around her and noted that many of the adult shinobi were prepared to fight her if she chose to disobey. Her mother began to soothe her. She lost her psychotic look as it went back to a frown etched upon her face. Nodding to them, she walked away and used Suna Shunshin no Jutsu, sand body flicker technique, to appear next to her team, who began trying to pry about the whole, being a girl, thing. They received a glare in response. Naruto chuckled at the situation before jumping back to the Konoha group. When he landed, his fellow genin were looking at him with their mouths agape. Even the normally stoic Shino lost his calculating personality for a moment to stare in shock. He grinned at them. What, you act like you've never seen chakrams before, the silver-haired teen stated. He was then almost tackled by Tenten, who was staring at the weapon in awe. His sweat dropped. Take a picture, Panda-chan, it'll last longer. Tenten ignored the snarky comment and tried to touch the demonic weapon, only to get burned. When her finger was about a centimeter away, she quickly pulled her hand back, getting over the fact she had just been burned by the weapon. She looked at Naruto. Naruto-san, please remove the anti-theft seal so I can examine it, she pleaded. No can do, Panda-chan, he said without a care. This weapon is sentient, so it has a mind of its own. The sensei and some of his fellow genin were listening close now. He wouldn't allow you to touch him unless he likes you. He says he doesn't like you. But I barely even know you, she exclaimed in frustration. How can it hate somebody it doesn't know? He shrugged. If it makes you feel any better, he doesn't really like anybody except me and some other demons. He heard his friends and their sensei shout out, demon. Before an explanation. Look, I told you Gai my Keke Genkai had 5 main abilities. I told you about one of them. The second one is called Akuma no Ude. This ability allows me to take souls of demons I kill and turn them into sentient weapons. The others began to talk amongst themselves while the Jonin circled. Naruto Asuma spoke for them. Was that name we heard what we think it is? He asked, slightly hesitant. Naruto nodded. Yes, he has become one of my weapons, he responded casually. He noticed the looks they shot him. Look, Sandai Moji-san knows about this already, and as discussed, if Kyuubi ever tried anything, then I had to tell him immediately. So far he has yet to try a thing, and I am not expecting him to. He and I are partners, so I trust him. He saw Asuma about to say something again and growled in annoyance. Look, I know you're only asking because you're worried, but please just trust me. I know what I'm doing. Besides, the next match involves one of your students anyway. Asuma turned his head and found that Naruto was indeed correct when he found that his remaining student's name appear on the screen. Nara Shikamaru versus Tsurugi Masumi. Masumi smiled under his mask and hoped over the railing. Shikamaru just sighed and walked down the steps, ignoring the shouts of good luck from his friends. Hayate stood before them and nodded at them. Are both fighters ready? Oh, yes, said Masumi sadistically as he rubbed his hands together. I'm going to enjoy this. Mendokus, how troublesome, said the lazy shinobi. Hayate's sweat dropped as and took the response as the Nara's version of yes. He began the match. Masumi dashed forward in an attempt to capture Shikamaru, only to be forced to a halt. Shikamaru sighed lazily with his hands in the rat seal. Kagemane no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, success, he stated in a bored tone. He noticed Masumi trying to struggle free and sighed. Don't try it, it won't work. He noticed Masumi's glare. You shouldn't have been so cocky out of the gate. It was annoying but a good advantage. Not only that, but it seems you forgot that a Nara can control his and another person's shadows if it's within range. You came into mine and fell right for it. This will change nothing. Masumi sneered at him. You will run out of chakra eventually, and when you do, I'll just spring from here and break your limbs. Shikamaru gave him a lazy grin. You really thought I didn't think about that? He moved his hand toward his pouch, causing his opponent to do the same. He pulled out a kunai with an explosive note attached while his opponent just threw a regular kunai. They both threw the kunai and each back flipped to avoid it. Masumi, however, ended up flipping into the wall where the kunai was lodged into. causing him to fall face forward. The kunai overhead then exploded and rubble from the wall fell on top of him. Shikamaru released his shadow as the medics ran over to check on Masumi. While he was declared the winner by Hayate, he sighed and placed his hands in his pockets and walked back up the stairs toward the teams from Konoha. When he got there, he found everybody, Naruto included, looking at him with a sweat drop. "What? Why are you all staring like that?" he asked. Naruto just looked at him. "That was just so boring," said Naruto in a monotone, making him sound as if he was dead. I think the battle between Lee and that Yoroi guy was more fun to watch, and Lee kicked his ass in a matter of 30 seconds. Shikamaru's brow furrowed in annoyance at his fellow Genin's comment and made him ask, "You think I did this to entertain you?" Naruto nodded his head like the answer was obvious. "Yeah, why else would we be a part of this tournament?" Shikamaru decided to point out the obvious, to be promoted to a higher rank. Naruto stared blankly at him. "So, this isn't a battle royal just for fun?" "No, you idiot," shouted all of the Konoha teams present. Naruto held up his hands. "Hey, I was kidding. Give me a break. Do you all really think I'm that dumb?" Everyone gave him a deadpan look, including Hinata as well. "Hey, fuck you all." He began to grumble as the next match was announced. Tsuchi-kin vs Sabaku Tamari. Tamari, from across the way, jumped over the railing. Her opponent did so as well. The med at the center of the field and Hayate stepped forward. "Ready to lose, Suna bitch," commented Kin offhandedly. Tamari growled in annoyance. "Not on your life, you auto whore." She stayed back before smirking at her. "So, how many times did they blow up inside you?" Twice, maybe 3 times?" The auto kunoichi lost it. "You bitch," she shouted. Hayate, knowing that a catfight was about to ensue, yelled for the match to start and then jumped away to escape the wrath of the 2 females. He wasn't stupid. He knew not to get in front of a brawl between 2 pissed-off kunoichi. He actually wanted to keep his balls. Kin jumped at Tamari, who batted at her with the fan she carried on her back. Kin dodged under the swing and managed to give Tamari a swift uppercut to the chin and then kicked her in the stomach, forcing her back a bit. Kin continued with her assault, punching her in the gut and then performing a sweep kick to knock her off of her feet. Tamari, to save herself, planted the fans but on the ground to keep her up and then brought it up to block an attack from Kin to her chest. Kin's hand recoiled in pain from hitting the giant metal fan and was forced back to avoid being hit from a direct attack. She noticed Tamari had a bruise on her cheek and decided to try and rile her up. "What's the matter, Suna bitch? Can't take the heat," she mocked. Tamari kept her cool when she noticed Kin had a bloody fist, most likely gotten from hitting her fan and showing that she was a bit beaten up as well. "I don't know, whore," Tamari began. "I can take the heat fine, but you aren't looking so good, your hand being a prime example." Kin growled and quickly threw some senbon. What that girl didn't know was that it had her special bells on them. They would distract her and then she would get hit by the senbon in the neck, putting her in a death-like state. So technically, Suna couldn't get mad at Otto before the invasion for killing one of their kunoichi. That was supposed to be the plan had she actually taken into account the fact that Tamari carried a fan, which usually signified a wind user. So when Tamari saw the senbon coming right at her, she smirked. She held out her fan, allowing it to open up. Kamaitachi no jutsu. Sickle weasel technique. The wind blew away the needles back toward their thrower, who jumped away to avoid it, but that was all that Tamari needed to finish the match. The blonde aimed her fan toward the still airborne Kin. "I got you. Kamaitachi no jutsu." She waved the fan and a huge column of wind surrounded the young Otto kunoichi. The girl put up her arms to try and block the wind that kept her afloat, but she could not. She continued to be cut up by tiny blades of wind, causing her to scream in pain. Finally, when the wind calmed, the girl fell to the floor and a sickening crack was heard as her body hit the concrete. Kin lay in the crater completely motionless. The medics rushed over and knew she was alive, but had severe fractures all over her body. They rushed her away and Hayate declared Tamari the winner. She walked back up the stairs toward her sister and sensei. With Konoha teams, "Wow, that was really brutal," was the only comment that Asuma could think at the time. "Brutal is the understatement of the century," said Naruto as he stared at the field. "To be honest, I would have preferred them ripping each other's clothes off instead of the bloody mess." Naruto was smacked on the back of the head by Sasuke, who looked slightly annoyed. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. "Okay, what's with you? You preferred they take their clothes off during the fight?" she asked with an eye twitch. "What's it matter to you, Sasuke? You think you wouldn't mind either? After all, any male would enjoy staring at female flesh, even if it only is a little." "Not if he isn't a pervert," he replied. "Everyone is a pervert, Sasuke. Some are just better at hiding it. Besides, it's a natural human instinct at work." He leaned forward. "You know, ever since I found out your secret, you've been acting differently. Hell, you've even started socializing more, care to explain. He looked at him. Well, isn't that what you told me to do? You wanted me to interact with others more and I'm doing that. Seeing Naruto continue to stare, he sighed. Look, now that someone else knows my secret, I can kind of let loose a bit more. I mean, you promised to back me up should people start asking questions, so I guess just some of the pressure is gone, you know. Naruto continued to look at him, before smirking. Okay, Sasuke, whatever you say, though you might want to get your ass down to the field so you can fight Panda-chan. Looking at the board, Sasuke, read, Uchiha Sasuke vs Higurashi Tenten. Sasuke smirked at Naruto. Well, that's my cue. He jumped over the rail and met Tenten at the center of the arena. He grinned at Tenten in some excitement. Give me a good match, weapons girl. Tenten's sweat dropped. Okay, is this guy bipolar or something? In the beginning, Sasuke was all broody, but ever since their team got to the tower, he was socializing a bit more, showing some emotions. She had heard fangirls talk about him a lot, but not like how he was acting now. It was somewhat suspicious. Instead of bring it up, however, she decided to indulge him. Whatever, Sasuke-san, just be prepared to lose, she stated with confidence. Hayate looked at them both. Are you two ready? He asked. He received two nods. Very well then, let the match begin. Tenten quickly pulled out a scroll and channeled chakra to it. A puff of smoke filled the air, and when it cleared, Tenten held a pair of wooden tonfas to battle with. She began jumping around before rushing toward Sasuke, who could see her slow movements even without his Sharingan active. He pulled out two kunai for each hand and went to meet her. She ran in and attempted to strike him in the stomach, but he parried the attack with ease and brought his left hand forward in a stabbing motion. She blocked with her right tonfa. The kunai had enough force to lodge it in the shaft of the weapon. Seizing an opportunity where she saw it, she sweep kicked him while he was shaken up and smacked him with the butt of her weapon, sending him backward and allowing her to continue her assault. She hit him in the stomach, causing him to lose his breath, and kept at it, hitting him in various places like the shoulder and the leg, causing him to lose his balance. At one point she finally hit him in the face, sending him to the floor. She smiled, thinking she had beaten Konoha's supposed prodigy, but was shocked when she saw the boy stand. He looked up and revealed a two-tomoed Sharingan in all of its glory. She looked at the red eyes that had two black comma-like marks in shock. These were the glorious eyes of the Uchiha clan? They didn't look like anything special to her. Thinking she would win despite her opponent's new eyes, she rushed forward, intent on defeating him. She swiped at him, only for him to shock her by dodging the attack like it was nothing special. She tried to hit him in his legs, but he jumped over and kicked her in face, sending her tumbling to the ground. She attempted to get up, only to find a kunai near her throat. She looked to see the Uchiha looking down at her, his two tomos rotating slowly as if trying to hypnotize her. He was smiling at her. Give up, he said casually. You can't substitute because you have nothing to substitute with, so you can't get out. I'm also holding a knife to your throat, so if you went for anything, then I could just slit your throat. Give up, for you have lost. Knowing she was defeated, she conceded to the proctor and was released from Sasuke's hold. They both went back to the stair only to find Naruto now walking down them. He walked past Sasuke and patted him on the back. Nice job, bro, he said. With Orochimaru, Kukakuku, laughed the Habi Senin as he watched the events below unfold. Sasuke-kun's performance was quite interesting. I knew he would be a worthy subject. He then looked to Naruto, who was approaching the last of his remaining members from Oto. He knew that the boy, Dosu, would not win against the Sparta, so he figured he would use him to draw out to see more of Naruto's abilities. He was expendable, wasn't he? Let's see some more of your power, Naruto-kun. Down on the field, Naruto noticed that Dosu was at the center waiting for him when they had their first encounter. The mummy-like boy got away from him before he could do damage well. It was a one-on-one match now. There was no place to run or to hide for him. However, he knew that he needed to have some kind of self-restraint. He needed information that the mummy probably had. Why would he care if the mummy was intact or not? Well, he knew Orochimaru was obviously up to something besides wanting to make Sake his personal little slave. This bandaged kid probably knew the real reason why, so after he beat him to a bloody pulp, he would extract the need information after the exams were over. Naruto stood in front of the bandaged boy and smirked. I told you I would get to you, didn't I? The boy smiled underneath the bandages. Well, let's just say I'll be tougher for you than that Inuzuka boy. I'll be the judge of that. Naruto replied happily. Hayate approached them and before he even asked if they were ready, received two nods. Finding it a little freaky that they practically read his mind, he began the match. Immediately, Dosu rushed forward and jumped to a spot near Naruto, who just stood there with a grin waiting for the attack. Dosu got next to him. "This is the end for you, Kiyomi-san," resonating echo drill. Naruto felt a small sting in his ear, but that was pretty much it. He looked at Dosu, who looked surprised that Naruto was not on the ground screaming in agony. "Sorry," he apologized, "but was that small sound supposed to do anything?" Naruto sighed when he saw Dosu dumbly shake his head. "Well then, that was anticlimactic. And here I thought I would be able to show off more of my badassery. Just had to ruin it, didn't you, mummy man?" Naruto growled in fake frustration. "Well then, I'll end this quickly, Sparta no Amu." Naruto's arm morphed into a demonic one, shocking all in the room except for the Iwa-genin, who had already saw it, and picked Dosu up by the head, his arm covered in raw energy. He slammed Dosu's head down gently, gently enough where he could survive the blow but would be knocked out as a result. Dosu's head was slammed into the ground. Naruto let his body fall to the earth as the medical teams rushed in to bring him to the medical wing. Naruto looked at the shocked expressions all over the arena and did the sensible thing at the moment. He bowed, as if he was receiving applause and praise. Yup, he knew he was going to have to explain a lot later, but he didn't care, he just basked in the moment. 10 minutes later, the chosen few for the next round of the exam were now standing in front of the Hokage, each with a number in their hand. "The numbers you have selected will decide your match for the next portion of the exams. Please tell us your number when you are pointed to. We will start first with Nara-san." "Mendoku's, I have number 7, the lazy boy said. "I have number 3, said Ino with great confidence. "I have number 1, growled the male Iwa-nin. "I have number 2, Shino said without any emotion. "I have 11, said the new feminine-like voice of Gaara. "I have 8, Tamari said simply. "I received 10, Neji said also with no emotion. "I have 4, shouted a cheerful Ayane. "I have received the youthful number of 6, guess who?" "I have 9, Sasuke said gruffly, glancing over to see the number his teammate had received. "I got 5, lucky me," said the silver-haired boy with a grin, knowing full well who he would be going up against. The proctor nodded in acknowledgement. "Everyone," he began, "if you look at the board, you will see your match placements." Everyone looked at the board and saw the placements. Third round placements. Match 1. Shina Renji vs Aburame Shino. Match 2. Yamanaka Ino vs Shinichi Ayane. Match 3. Sparta Naruto vs Rock Lee. Match 4. Nara Shikamaru vs Sabaku Tamari. Match 5. Uchiha Sasuke vs Hyuga Neji. Bye match. Sabaku Gaara. There were murmurs of excitement going around the room. Naruto was no exception. Rock Lee would be a good opponent for him to fight. Lee was hopefully someone who can match his speed. He was interrupted from his thoughts by the Hokage. "Everyone, you all have 1 month to train before this last portion of the exam, so use it wisely. Many important people will be coming to see your performances and will judge if your village is fit to receive missions from them, so show them your best. I wish you all good luck." He and his advisors disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Naruto looked at all the people who would be participating and couldn't help but allow his grin to spread wider across his face. This truly would be a fun exam, regardless if Orochimaru had something planned or not, and if he did, well then he would have to deal with Konoha's new devil. Few days after prelims, Naruto's apartment, Naruto laid on his bed, thinking on the events that had occurred during the preliminary rounds of the third stage. After they had been given their match assignments, they were blindfolded and escorted through a tunnel under the build which led back to the village. Apparently, even with their own genin, they were not trusted enough to know one of the secrets of their own village. Kakashi then left for the hospital with Sakura in his arms, saying he would come by their respective homes and tell them the training plan for the tournament. Knowing Kakashi, even if actually did want training from him, he would have to find the man himself. However, he wasn't worried as much about training for the actual tournament itself and was more concerned about the secret plan he had managed to uncover by interrogating that mummy from sound. Flashback. After Naruto had left the area they had exited the tunnel from, he followed the young bandage-wrapped shinobi he had fought during the exams all over the place. If someone were to ask him why he was following his target, he probably wouldn't have an answer for them. Lucky for him, however, that he could blend in with his surroundings. Hey, he was able to paint the Hokage monument in a bright orange jumpsuit in broad daylight, and nobody noticed until he had already done it. Blending in, especially with his current clothing, would be like a parlor trick in comparison. As to why he had decided to follow the bandage genin, it was simply because he might have knowledge on what the Habisanin, Snake Sage, had used to make that curse mark that was put on Sake. The curse mark actually had him slightly worried. He was really starting to hope that there was no yokai, demonic energy, involved, because if it was, Then he was really stumped on how the damned snake was able to create his own yokai without being a demon. He continued looking at his target. He was talking to some food merchants, probably trying to get some lunch in his stomach from all those days his team had been in the forest. The silver-haired genin then took notice that while Dosu was walking away with a bag in hand that he had just done a quick substitution with a Bunshin clone he had created. Now that he thought about it, Dosu seemed far more skilled in espionage, the actual combat, which was a little surprising to him. You would think that someone who walked around dressed like a mummy would suck at infiltration and such, but the skills were there. He was so lost in his thoughts that he almost hadn't noticed the bandaged hand about to strike him from behind. Almost didn't notice. Moving quickly to subdue his attacker, he performed a sweep kick, knocking his opponent off balance. Then, like lightning, he grabbed the person by the scruff of their clothing before they could fall and lifted the figure up. Naruto turned around and saw he was holding the form of Dosu, the one he had been following. Naruto chuckled when he noticed Dosu glaring at him with his one eye. You know, I'm kind of insulted that you think that a simple jutsu like Bunshin no Jutsu clone technique would trick me, he commented, trying his best to sound upset. He noticed Dosu glare harder, causing Naruto to grin at him again. You know, you're only making this so much more fun for me, right? Dosu growled at him. Why are you following me, you silver-haired pest? He asked while struggling to break free. So I'm a silver-haired pest, huh? Not the worst thing I've ever been called. You could probably put it up there with Gaki and such maybe. He gave a small chuckle again, but again, I've been called much worse. Naruto's grin then wavered and gave way to a stern look. He was all business now. I want you to tell me about Orochimaru. Noticing the bandage-wrapped boy's shocked look, he continued. I know you were working for him and it was damn easy for me to tell that he was playing the role of your sensei during the preliminary stage, so tell me, what is Orochi Teme up to? Naruto was surprised when he felt his captive's spit hit his face, causing his eyebrows to rise questioningly. How the hell could he spit on him? He was wearing bandages for Kami-sama's sake. Like I'll tell you shit, replied Dosu, still struggling to break out of Naruto's strong grip. Naruto looked at him and sighed. He turned his head to the side and slowly turned his head back with a face that shocked and scared Dosu at the same time. The guy holding his face was pouting and had his eyes watering. Please, he said in a low voice as if he was about to break into tears, tell me what Orochimaru is planning. Dosu looked at him with a sweat drop. No, he deadpanned. Naruto's face returned to normal. Oh come on, that shit always worked when I was a kid with the female Anbu. Well, in case you haven't noticed dumbass, I'm male, said Dosu flatly. Was he really trying a technique that worked on females on him? Naruto gave him a suspicious glance. I don't know, Naruto began. I mean, everyone thought Gaara was a guy, but look how that turned out. How the hell do I know you don't have a pair of melons under those bandages? Dosu got a tick mark on the back of his head. When I get the chance, I'm going to murder you. Naruto gained a horrified look. Oh my Kami-sama, not only is he actually a she, but she's PM Sing. Not even a demon wants to fuck with a woman on her time of the month. In his head, he could clearly make out Kyuubi saying, amen to that, before getting slapped in the head by the demoness inside of him. Dosu started sputtering unintelligible words, his moods looking like they were a mixture of sadness and anger. Dosu finally chose to make his rage clear. You motherfucking piece of shit. I'm a man, you moron. I have a pair down there if you want to check. Naruto looked even more horrified. And give those sick Yoi fangirls more ammunition? Not a chance in hell. I hate just thinking about what they would do with it. He shuddered at the thought. Naruto then growled. Oh man, we're getting off topic here. He tightened his grip on Dosu. Tell me what Orochimaru is planning or I will take drastic measures that will be so painful that you will wish you were dead. Dosu gulped. Naruto seemed like he really would try something drastic, but then again, he had him too. Deciding to try and play it cool, he looked at Naruto before chuckling. You really think you have me, don't you? He asked as though he were amused. This is a foreign village. If I go missing, the other hidden villages will blame Konoha and they will be trusted even less amongst villages. Not only that, but you'll just give Otto a reason to go to war with Konoha. I'm sure Iwa wouldn't mind helping us out. I think with enough convincing that Kumo would help too. It's a losing situation for you. You really think they would do all of that just for a genin? Naruto asked in a flat tone. Seeing Dosu nod, Naruto sighed. You're an idiot. You know that? Seeing his questioning look, Naruto continued on. We're genin, the lowest of the low. We make up standard military forces, the grunts of the shinobi world. If you think about it, if you were to go missing, you'll be lucky if someone even notices you're gone. In other words, for somebody who is basically a pawn on a chessboard, do you really think you're that important where a war would occur over your disappearance? Dosu finally thought about it and paled significantly. If he were to go missing, Orochimaru would probably suspect that he was probably captured by the enemy. He would then call of the invasion to keep his forces intact, fearing Konoha might be prepared for him now. But Naruto was right. No war would be started over his disappearance. Seeing Dosu actually think about it, Naruto decided that he would try and seal the deal. Look, you know hubby Teme doesn't care about what happens to you, and to be frank, neither do I, but I'll give you a choice. You can give me the information or I could use force. Your choice, mummy man. Dosu weighed his options. The forceful method probably involved taking him to an interrogation specialist, and those guys knew how to break a man's spirit. That sounded quite painful, and he had no urge to experience it firsthand. However, then again, if he were to give the information and Orochimaru were to find out that he had done it, things would not end well for him, and he knew it. Finally, Dosu picked the former of the two options. Alright, I'll tell you what you want to know, he said. However, I want protection from Konoha for this, alright? Naruto nodded. If your information is credible, then I think I can arrange that, and just to make sure it is credible, his eyes flashed purple and gained 4 rings with a now dilated pupil. Jigokudo, Naraka Path. Suddenly, a ripple formed in the ground behind Naruto, and a second later, a large black face that also wielded a pair of the purple rippled eye burst through purple fire. It also had a crown on its head with kanji for hell on it. Dosu stared at the being behind Naruto and began to wonder if telling him the information was a good idea. That thing behind him, it just wasn't normal just be looking at it. He sensed a bad vibe coming off of it, and it made him want to run for his life. Naruto on the other hand turned around, looked at the being behind him, and gave a low whistle. Whoa man, check you out, he shouted while grinning. You just look so menacing and badass, if you want me to be honest with you. He turned back to Dosu. So big guy, want to lend me a hand here? The beast complied by opening its mouth to reveal a large pink tongue. The being stuck its tongue out and contorted it into the shape of a hand. Dosu felt his mouth open and his tongue eject from his mouth, somehow passing through the bandages and extending all the way to the demonic hand, which grasped it firmly, causing Dosu to whimper. Dosu's eyes wandered to Naruto. Naruto smirked at him. Sorry, but he is my insurance. The big guy back there helps me with interrogation. There is a rule to how this interrogation works, though. If you lie to me even once during questioning, the big guy back there will eat your life energy and kill you. Then I can get the information I want regardless. This one just happens not to kill you, understand? Crystal clear, replied Dosu shakily. Naruto nodded his head. Okay then, so let's start this interrogation. First question. Is Orochimaru planning an invasion of Konoha? Yes, he intends to attack on the day of the exams after that Uchiha fights and is weak enough. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the response. I know Orochimaru wants the Sharingan, copy wheel eye. That fact is as clear as day. What I don't understand is why he would wait until Sasuke fights. Dosu shakes his head. Look, I don't know for sure, but my guess is so the prick is weak enough to capture with ease. Naruto nodded in acceptance of the idea. Orochimaru may have been playing with them in the Forest of Death, but Sake had known how to hold on long enough to keep back. It meant that she could at full strength probably put up resistance when Orochimaru sent troops after her. Now it was starting to make sense. He knew that it wasn't just the Uchiha he was after, though. The destruction of Konoha had to be in there somewhere. If it were just for Sake, the snake wouldn't bother with an invasion and would have just sent in a capture team. He had to be sure. Naruto asked seriously, do you know what his main objectives with this invasion are? His captive nodded hesitantly. Yes, he had 3 goals that he told us about originally. One was to take the Fuin no Sho, Scroll of Seals. The second goal was the elimination of the Sandaime Hokage. Naruto's grip on his shirt tightened, so he moved as quickly as he could to the next one. The third was to burn Konoha to the ground. Naruto now was able to confirm his suspicions. By taking out the Hokage, Konoha shinobi would begin to lose morale and the tides would turn in favor of the invading forces from Oto and Suna. It would also make it harder for survivors to rebuild the village. In the end, it was a good strategy, but Orochimaru was unable to factor in one thing. Naruto Sparta was there to help keep the tide in Konoha's favor. With this information, he would be able to go to his Oji-san and tell what Orochimaru was up to. Konoha's forces would be prepared for invasion and being more skilled than the forces of Suna or Oto. Defeat them with little loss of life. If Orochimaru had caught them off guard, the losses might have been worse. Naruto began thinking of any other questions he wanted to ask. That yokai that he and that curse seal emitted was annoying him. He may have understood where Orochimaru had gotten the idea from, but where did he get the power to bring it to life? He looked Dosu in the eye. Tell me, do you know if Orochimaru has come into contact with any demons as of late? Dosu looked thoughtful for a moment, contemplating the answer before shrugging his shoulders. Can't say, replied Dosu in a tone that showed how unsure he was. Orochimaru-sama is a strange guy, but he mostly keeps anything big to himself. Then his eyes widened. Wait, I just remembered two things. Well, what are they? Naruto asked impatiently. This could be very important and he was lucky the guy in front of him remembered before he let him go. Well, for one thing, Orochimaru-sama has started collecting giant black slabs with a strange language on them. I heard him mutter something about a portal. Orochimaru was using giant black stones with strange markings on them as a portal. What for? Wait, that just sound like a false hellgate that I was being ordered to protect a few thousand years back, exclaimed Echidna within his mindscape. Naruto was lost for a moment. Excuse me, he asked a bit confused. Back before I became a devil arm, I was the guardian of a false hell gate created by the Order of the Sword in Fortuna Forest. Of course, I was defeated by Dante and he destroyed my gate. Seeing Naruto still not understand, she continued, Naruto-sama, what the little bandaged human is describing to you is called an artificial hell gate. Unlike a true hell gate, artificial ones can only let a certain amount of demons through. The memories from Dante and Nero on the subject kicked in and made him realize what Orochimaru truly had. If he somehow managed to get one or two of those into Konoha on the day of the invasion, they just might be in trouble. No, might as putting it mildly, they would be in a lot of trouble. Deciding that he wanted to get this second thing Dosu remembered over with, Naruto asked, what was the other thing? I saw a book, said Dosu. A book, Naruto repeated out loud in an incredulously tone. What the hell is so important about a goddamn book that you decided that I needed to know about it? Because, when I was able to sneak a peek at it while I was grabbing something for Orochimaru-sama, it described about creating a higher being of some sort. It kind of looked like a demon but also like one of those mythical angels, you know? A demonic-looking angel sounded kind of familiar to him. He thought about it and then searched through some of the memories his three ancestors had left him. He came across some memories and information that shocked him. There were humans that had turned themselves into demons that had angel-like appearances. He kept replaying the images in his mind over and over again. It seemed unreal to him. Then again, who was he to say that it was impossible? He was a half-devil himself, so it probably wasn't in the range of impossibility. The only question was how Orochimaru got his hands on the procedures to perform the ascension ceremony. Wasn't their main headquarters burned to the ground after it self-destructed? If it was, which he knew for a fact that it had, then that meant one of two things. A. Someone made a copy of the notes and stashed them somewhere, or B. The book somehow survived the burning. However he got it didn't matter at this point, however, because if he had it, then that would explain why he felt yokai being released from Orochimaru hell. It would explain how he was able to create the cursed seal and influence others with it. Naruto nodded with new resolve. He was going to have to warn the village before it could occur. He was going to stop Orochimaru and he was going to make sure that Snake died. However, before Naruto could do anything of the sort, he needed to tie up a loose end. Naruto looked back at the King of Hell. Time for your judgment, big guy. Did he tell the truth or not? The beast behind him seemed to process the information. There was a tense moment before the King of Hell released his grip on Dosu's fake tongue. The mummy wasn't lying to him like he had secretly hoped. This was going to be a big problem then. He looked down at Dosu before grabbing him again. Dosu's one visible eye widened. Wait, he panicked. I told you everything because you said you wouldn't kill me. And I am not going to, replied Naruto. He saw Dosu relax a bit. However, I am going to wipe your mind of the conversation we just had. Can't have it reach Hibiteme, can we? Naruto saw him about to protest, but before he could, Naruto thrust his other hand over Dosu's forehead. He then selected the memory he wanted by searching through the boy's mind using his ninjendo, human path, and selected the memory. He destroyed any trace of it from Dosu's mind and let the auto nin drop onto the floor of the roof they were on. Naruto walked to the edge and looked out over the village. His mind flashed through events of when he was a child, the looks of hatred he received, the scorn that had been directed at him. Parents forced their children to stay away from him and made it look like he was a bad kid. It made him clench his fists in anger at their ignorance. He then looked down upon the people he had sworn to protect as a shinobi and was surprised he saw young children playing in one of Konoha's many parks. He looked and saw merchants and their buyers happily talk about the day's events. He saw them display an emotion he had never seen on their faces. Around him they were happy. He clenched his fists harder. They were happy when he had not been. Why do they deserve happiness when he had not been given the chance for it himself? And then he remembered why they hated him. They hated him because of the demon that had been in his gullet. They were afraid that the demon who had taken the lives of their family members, who had destroyed over a quarter of Konoha before it had been stopped, would escape and do it all again just to finish the job. And their fear was somewhat justified. Demons don't like to leave a job unfinished, or else their peers would call them weak. They were afraid, and when people are afraid, they act without rational. That was a part of nature, the human self-preservation instinct. As he had heard the demonic kitsune refer to it in order to ensure their survival, they would isolate him. So could he really blame them? Do they really deserve to die? He questioned. Despite his want and desire to, he could not, despite what his heart said, hate them. They were afraid, and that is why they acted the way they did. He did not want to justify their actions, but this was the correct answer. So, to overcome this, he would have to stay true to his original idea. Become strong and show them that they have nothing to fear. He nodded his head in confirmation, and as soon as that rare moment of seriousness was there, it had disappeared from him when he dashed off toward his home, thinking somewhat happy thought again despite what he had heard. Flashback end. Naruto pushed himself further up against the headboard of his bed and sighed in frustration. He had the knowledge on the attack, but yet he wasn't able to talk to the old man about the attack because he was busy with preparations for the finals of the exams. It was like whenever he had to tell the old coot something, he was always busy. Then again, that is the life of the Hokage, paperwork and all. He would have continued thinking on the matter if something not bumped into his bed. He turned and looked at one of his clones, who was holding a vacuum in his hand and trying to clean under the bed. Naruto growled at the clone. Watch where you're going, Baka, he said hotly. The clone pulled its head from under the bed and gave its creator a blank, "Shut up, Oyobun," it began plainly, "you are not even helping us clean the apartment. And that's why I have you guys, for cheap menial labor." "Screw you, Oyobun," shouted all the clones in the room. There had been one dusting in the corner, one sweeping up and cleaning the kitchen area, one was picking up all the garbage in the apartment of the floor, and there was also one on the front porch tending to the plants. "Besides, the only reason you even have us is because you stole the damn scroll up in Cage Tower," commented the clone dusting in the corner. He was promptly dispelled in a puff of smoke. "So, anyone else want to make a snarky comment?" asked the creator of the clones. Said clones promptly shut up and continued with their work. Naruto then created a new one and had it continue the dispelled clone's job. Naruto nodded in satisfaction and was about to lay back down when there was a knock at the door. The silver-haired teen pulled himself off of his bed and went toward the door. He sidestepped the vacuuming clone and opened the door and revealed an Anbu with purple hair dressed in standard Anbu uniform. The person wore the Neko cat mask. Naruto smirked at her appearance. "Well, hello there, Neko-chan," he greeted. "How've you been? You never call, you never write. What's a poor boy to think when his favorite Anbu protector disappears from duty?" He couldn't see it, but she was smiling behind her mask. "It has been a while, hasn't it?" she commented lightly. "But you seem to be doing well for yourself, aren't you, Naruto-kun?" He smiled in return. "Well, I have been getting around, I suppose." "I can see that, seeing as how you defeated your opponents easily in the competition." He smirked in return. "Well, I always did tell you I would become the most awesome shinobi ever, didn't I?" She chuckled lightly in response, causing him to grin slightly. "You know, have I ever told you that you have a beautiful laugh?" She rolled her eyes behind her mask. "Yes, you did," she deadpanned. "When you were a kid, you constantly told me. You once even said that you would one day become my boyfriend." He pouted for a second before once again grinning full force. "Well, I'm old enough now to become your boyfriend. What do you say?" She blushed behind her mask and began to imagine it a bit before replying. "In your dreams, Naruto-kun." Ouch, he pulled back, placing his hands over his heart. "Your words are so hurtful, Neko-chan." A waterfall of tears began to cascade down his face as he looked at her, seeing her unconvinced. He stopped his attempts and crossed his arms over his still bare chest. "Well, that failed miserably. However, seeing as how you just suddenly showed up out of the blue again, I'll take a gamble and guess you're not here for pleasantries." She nodded in confirmation. "Yes, Hokage-sama has asked that you report to the tower immediately for a meeting." "Understood," he acknowledged. Going into business mode, he turned around and looked back inside the apartment. "Guys, get this place clean by the time I get back." He then closed the door and followed his former protector to the tower. Cage Tower. Few minutes later, the old Cage was conversing with his former pupil when Neko and Naruto entered. They immediately stopped their conversation and looked toward the two. The old man smiled at them. "Thank you, Neko," he said. "All Anbu, leave us." All three of them watched Neko leave in a puff of smoke and the signatures in the room disappear. A silencing seal appeared on all of the walls of the room. Sarutobi looked at the young man in front of him. In the preliminary rounds, he showed such power and skill that he had ever seen from the boy, and the abilities he displayed only further proved his theory that he was being truthful in this matter. The wizened man lit his pipe and then stroked his long white beard. "Naruto-kun, congratulations are in order for your wins during your matches," he said with a small smile. Naruto did not grin, nor did he smile. His face stayed hardened. "We've got trouble, Oji-san," stated flatly. Both of the older men adopted the same face. "What's the matter, Gaki?" Jiraiya asked seriously. He was really hoping that he wasn't right about seal issue at this point. "It's Orochimaru. The statement caused both men to tense, but he continued, I have knowledge that he is going to attack the village on the day of the exam's finals. How do you know this? Asked Sarutobi, who was dreading the thought that his former student might be attacking on that day. I had my suspicions for one thing. He was with us during the exams. Seeing the men gain a questioning look, he decided to elaborate. He was disguised as the sensei from Auto. How could you tell it was him? Naruto-kun. 3 things led me to believe it was him. 1. He smelled of snakes. 2. His chakra signature felt familiar. The third thing is what disturbed me the most, though he was emitting the same yokai as the Ten no Juin. Cursed seal of heaven. It was without a doubt the damned snake. But kid, Orochimaru is human, how would he have yokai? Asked the white-haired Sennin. I have a theory that was presented to me by the soul of Gilgamesh, Echidna, thousands of years ago, before our current age. The world was far more advanced according to Echidna. She once had a partnership of sorts with an organization called the Order of the Sword, a group that was supposedly dedicated to protecting the world from demons. In reality, their goal was world domination of sorts. Echidna was in a contract with them. The leader was a human priest of sorts for the religion they believed in, which was the worship of the devil and my ancestor, Sparta. He and his followers used a ceremony called the Ascension Ceremony. The ceremony basically turned humans into demons that looked like angels and had the ability to switch between demon and human forms. I can't specify for sure, but it's the only way to explain what's going on. The two sat there stunned at the idea of one of the village's greatest enemies having demonic abilities, and Orochimaru with the powers of a demon could only make the Hubei Sennin even more powerful. He would actively threaten the village in various ways that they might not even be able to deal with. The old Hokage brought his wrinkled hand and brought it up to rub his temple. My boy, if what you're suggesting is true, then this could be a dire situation indeed. Tell me, where did you get this information? I got it off one of the Auto shinobi, he replied. I used the Jigokudo ability of the Rinnegan, Samsara Eye, which is basically an interrogation ability. I can tell the information was valid if the person answers all of my questions without lying, because if they even lie once, the king of hell consumes their souls. The person I interrogated lived, so I know he was telling truth afterwards. I eliminated the memory from his mind. Ignoring the fact they heard another ability of the Rinnegan, the two adults looked at each other, as if knowing what the other was thinking. They nodded and then looked toward Naruto. Sarutobi looked at Naruto. Thank you for the information, Naruto. You just probably saved the lives of thousands, as well as important figures attending the finals. The old Kage then reaches down and pulls out 2 scrolls. He throws them to Naruto, who catches them in his hand. It's a good thing that I was about to assign you these missions anyway. Naruto looked at the scrolls and saw they were both a rank mission scrolls and was greatly shocked he was getting 2 solo missions. He was only a genin, of course. He was happy that his grandfather figure trusted him so much. But a genin has never been given a solo mission before. That wasn't a D rank. Knocking himself out of his stupor, he shook his head and stared at the old man. Oji-san, you're really giving me 2 high-ranking missions? One of them is a solo mission, Naruto-kun, corrected Sarutobi. The other one is a joint mission with Jiraiya-kun here. Whoa, I'm going to be working with Ero Sennin, said man. Face faulted while the Kage just chuckled in his chair. Sarutobi looked over to his student with an amused smile. You know Jiraiya-kun, I think he hit the head on the nail with that one, didn't he? Said man just grumbled as he picked himself off the floor. He turned back to the silver-haired teen. Yes, you will be working with him. Your goal is to track down my other wayward student, Senju Tsunade. Naruto opened the mission scroll as he continued on. She was last seen on the borders of Hai no Kuni, land of fire, gambling in local casinos there. So, she's a gambler then. Any good? Jiraiya and Sarutobi stifled a laugh. Guess not then. He made a mental note to challenge her to a game of cards when they got back. So, why am Ero Sennin and I being sent after this broad? First off, kid, began Jiraiya, I wouldn't call her a broad to her face, or she'll punch you through a mountain. Second, we're going after her because if what you said is true, then we're going to need as much help as we can get. My spies had said Orochimaru was planning something, but they couldn't get a hold of it before. We were planning on getting Tsunade as a precaution, extra insurance if you would. However, this is your secondary mission, stated the old Hokage. While Jiraiya-kun here is gathering information on the current whereabouts of Tsunade, I need you to head to a small village in Kaminari no Kuni, land of lightning, to deal with a demon there. I'm sorry, I don't think I heard you right, stated Naruto with slight apprehension. You want me to go to a nation, with a village we've always been at war with, to deal with a demon problem? Seeing his leader nod, he sighed. If you don't mind me asking, why am I going there? Shouldn't their shinobi village be taking care of the problem? Sarutobi grinned slightly. But there is the beauty of it, my boy, he commented lightly. It seems the team that Kumogakure no Sato, village hidden in the clouds, has been unable to handle the situation. The villagers have been very unsatisfied with their handling of the situation and sent us a message with a job offer. This can be the greatest insult to a shinobi village, especially in their own territory. Yeah, but won't that make them want to kill me? Sarutobi looked thoughtful for a moment before responding. Yes, it might. However, they won't, because by attacking one of our shinobi, they would be declaring war on us. But I'm only a genin. Yes, Naruto-kun, but you are a Jinchuriki, power of human sacrifice. Another village killing a Jinchuriki is taken usually as a sign that the other village is preparing to go to war with them. This would cause an uproar amongst our council, not only because of your little friend, but because our shinobi council actually likes you. So that's why you can send me on this mission without worry, really. You are correct. Unless you do something to harm the country or their village in any way, you're basically protected in a way. Naruto nodded. He was gambling with his life here, but what was life without a little fun life and death situation? Fine then, I'll take care of the job. Good, you'll have 2 weeks to get it done and then meet back up with Jiraiya-kun during week 3 of the break. I'll have a hawk send you a message about where he is. Naruto grinned at him. I'll get it done. Oji-san, I'll run home and grab my stuff, then head out. Before he left, however, Sarutobi stopped him. Naruto-kun, by the way, I was informed this morning that the rest of the weapons you requested to be made have been finished and are in the weapons lab. Before you leave, head there and retrieve your items. Naruto nodded in confirmation before heading back to his apartment. Naruto's apartment. Several minutes later, Naruto was currently in his apartment grabbing some of the ninja supplies he needed. He figured that since he was going to be gone a while, that he should probably bring some training scrolls with him just in case. He packed some training scrolls on advanced manipulation he had bought at a shinobi store near his house, and also had them make more of his purple trench coat. He also sealed away a few other scrolls on kenjutsu, sword arts, and fuinjutsu, sealing arts. He figured learning a few kenjutsu moves might be best, since he was eventually going to have one of his ancestors' swords. Knowing a few techniques that could be used with them beforehand would probably be very helpful in developing ideas for more, as well as learning the techniques that came with the abilities. As for fuinjutsu, he wanted to know about seals should he come across them and need to make some of his own. His Oji-san had always told him that a good shinobi was well versed in every art. He knew he would never be good with genjutsu, illusionary techniques. So why not try and keep himself well-rounded? He finished putting everything onto his sealing scroll, sealed it up, and then placed it on a free belt loop. When he double-checked to make sure he had all of his equipment, he went to his chair, grabbed his trench coat, and slipped it on. Seemingly satisfied with the results, he walked to the door, opened it up, and walked out onto the railing way. He turned around and sealed the door with a locking seal. He was just about to walk away when he heard a voice from behind say, "Yo?" Naruto swiftly turned around and saw his one-eyed sensei looking at him and casually crouching on the railing. Well, if it isn't Mr. One-Eye, stated Naruto dryly. He performed a mock bow, causing the tails of his trench coat to fly up behind him. To what do I owe the honor of his majesty gracing me with his presence? Kakashi, from where he stood, did not look amused. Cut it out, Naruto, he deadpanned. I came to talk to you about training for the exams. Naruto abruptly stood up and faked shock. What? But I thought Uchiha-sama was your favorite pupil. Shouldn't you be offering him training instead? Kakashi frowned behind his mask. Naruto, you know that I don't have favorites. He then smiled at him. As for training, I figured I could train you alongside Sasuke for the exams. Naruto frowned at him. You know, I would be all for it, except for the fact that Sasuke and I, if we both win our matches, may end up fighting each other in the next round. We would probably know what the other could do, and then the battle would be no fun at all. He then grinned. Besides, even if I wanted to, I can't. And why can't you train with us? Because I've got a mission, the silver-haired teen stated before walking the other way toward the stairs, leaving behind a shell-shocked Kakashi. Genin, if they were participating in the exams, usually weren't given missions during the time of the finals. For one to do so, they would be forced to break away from their training to do it. This would take time out of Naruto's training schedule. Now he was curious. He hopped right to where Naruto was and began casually walking beside him on the rail. What kind of mission you got there, Naruto? He asked. You really want to know? Seeing his sensei nod, he motioned him to lean in closer. Well, you see, sensei. He positioned his mouth right at Kakashi's ear and shouted, it's a secret. The Jonin, so startled, lost control of his footing and fell off the railing. He fell into an open dumpster below. Naruto jumped down and landed next to the dumpster and looked at his sensei, whom just happened to be crawling out of the dumpster. You know, sensei, you really need to learn not to listen to me when I motion to come in close. What is this? The third time you've fallen for the same trick? Kakashi glared at his student, Enough Naruto, tell me your mission, this is an order from your superior. Naruto looked unfazed. Yeah. Well, my mission was from the Hokage directly, and in the mission scroll, it says no one is to know the details of the mission. If you want to know, ask him, Kakashi-sensei. He then began walking away. Anyway, see you in a month, sensei. Don't train, Sasuke, too hard. He then disappeared in a burst of speed. Kakashi fully stood up and jumped out of the trash dumpster. He pulled a stray banana peel from his hair and shook out the remaining gunk. He grunted as he shook off his legs and other body parts. I really need to talk to Hokage-sama about this. He then took a sniff of the rest of his body and belched. First though, I could really use a shower. He then preformed the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, to get back to his apartment, intent on taking a shower. Konoha Weapons Research Facility. Naruto had originally thought about saying goodbye to some people, but had decided against it because it would only make getting out of the village more troublesome, so he went straight to the village gate and showed the Eternal Gate guards, Azumo and Katetsu, his mission scroll. After wishing him well, they pointed him the direction of the weapons research facility. What he came to absolutely surprised him. The weapons facility was a small wooden building with smoke rising out of long metal pipes to the side. It was definitely not what he was expecting. He had thought it was going to be some cool high-tech underground facility or a huge base hidden inside the mountain, but all he got was some old shack. He knocked on the wooden door to the shack. He waited patiently, and after a minute, there was still no answer. Just when he was about to knock again, an explosion occurred within the building. He quickly drew Pyrotekuta and kicked the door, and smoke poured out of the room as he entered. Walking around carefully as the smoke cleared, he noticed all of the finely crafted weapons in the room. He walked in further and found a small figure rising in the smoke. Naruto used a small bit of wind chakra to clear away the smoke and found a short balding old man wearing a green coat and a small apron underneath. Naruto walked over and offered a hand to the older man, who gladly accepted. Thanks there, kid, he said happily. Naruto looked around at the still clearing smoke. What happened here, old-timer? Naruto asked curiously. The old man grinned at him sheepishly. Well, I was kind of testing a new smoke bomb formula that was supposed to stun the target. As you can see, it kind of backfired on me. Yup, I got no doubts about that. The older man smiled at him. Well, it's over now. Thanks for the help, kid. Name's Io. I'm in charge of making the village's weapons, but I guess you kind of figured that out now, huh? Naruto nodded at him. Yup, you got that right. I'm Sparta. Naruto, by the way. Io blinked in surprise before his eyes widened in realization. Oh, you're the young man who put in the request for those specially made weapons, right? Seeing Naruto nodded in confirmation, he let out a shout of excitement. My boy, you don't know how fun it was to make those little babies. A bet you gave us some schematics instead of just having me make it, but still, that was probably the most fun I've ever had, making a weapon of that magnitude. The old man then began to ramble on and on about it, reminding Naruto of a certain panda-like weapons expert. It looks like he just met another weapons enthusiast, one that was probably worse in fact. Yes, but this one isn't a sexy weapons-loving kunoichi that would probably enjoy inspect your weapon of chaos, stated the perverted kitsune in his gullet. Master, don't listen to Ero Kitsune, shouted Echidna. Besides, Weapons Girl has to get in line. I saw it first. Said statement caused Naruto to slightly blush and Kyuubi to roar in laughter. Naruto decided to tune out the conversation and thought it would be best to stop Io from continuing on about the weapons designs. Naruto put his hand out in front of the old man's face, causing him to stop. Look, he began. I appreciate how happy you were to do the project, and I would just love to spend the entire day talking to you about it. However, I have a mission, so if I could just pay you and pick up my order. The old man nodded in confirmation, a bit calmer now. Sorry, he apologized, but I just get so carried away when it comes to weapons that I sometimes lose track of the matter at hand. He saw Naruto was reaching for his wallet, but stopped him. As for payment, consider this on the house. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Really, I can pay you, it's fine. No way, kid, said a grinning Io. This was a really enjoyable project to work on. It was my pleasure to work on it. It's free of charge because I hope you'll come back after seeing my work and want me to make more items. Naruto was shocked. This guy may not know who he was, but this man, without even knowing him too well, just showed him a great deal of kindness. He was getting the feeling he and this guy were going to do a lot of business in the future and become very good friends. He grinned at the Io. Thanks, Io-san. Io smiled right back at him. Not a problem, kid. He turned around and looked at the back room. Shoseki, he called out, bring in young Sparta-san's order. There was a shout of, hi, from the back room. Out came a bi-spectacled boy who was dressed in a red jacket, a brown belt, and brown pants. He was carrying out a wide black box. Io pulled out a table and had the boy place the box on the table. He gave Naruto a loose grin. "You ready to see them, kiddo?" Seeing the young shinobi nod, he opened the case and revealed its contents. Inside, he saw a giant knife-like obsidian blade. It had an ornately etched base and a small bar in front of it that he could squeeze. The handle, red handle, would rotate as well from the look of things. Next were two rectangular-like objects with handles. One was white and had small gold carvings of angelic wings on both sides. The other was black and had red demonic-like wings carved into it on both sides. Naruto admired them carefully. "Io-san, you do great work." The old man's grin never left his face. "Thanks, kid." Seeing Naruto's hesitance, he made an encouraging motion. "Go ahead, take them." Naruto went and pulled out the weapons and placed them on the table to admire their beauty. In his opinion, they were magnificent, each of them a beautifully crafted works of art. Each of them could cause so much destruction. He knew one thing for sure. Io looked at him. "Naruto-san, give Shoseki your coat so he may sew on the weapons holster for your two guns, as you call them, while I explain the workings of the weapons to you." Naruto pulled off his coat and handed it to the assistant, who then went to the back room to sew on the holster. Io walked in front of the sword and began to explain it. "This sword here was built to your exact specifications. We put an engine in it like you asked. Though it was tough to make a small enough engine, let me tell you that when you rev that handle, it absorbs your fire chakra into the blade and superheats it for maximum performance. The only downside is that you will have to make your own sword style with it, seeing as it's too big to be used like a regular katana." He then pointed at the two handguns. "Those two little babies right there weren't as hard. You channel regular or elemental chakra into them and they are compacted into little balls in the barrel like a cannonball in cannon. Depending on the amount you put in, the attacks could range from minor to lethal, but again, that depends on how much you compress into the ball. The outside is made of metal as well, so you don't have to worry about them breaking easily." Naruto picked up the two handguns and weighed them. They were light, so they wouldn't slow him down. He circulated his chakra and felt it being absorbed into the gun like the weapons maker had said. He would bet if he pulled the trigger, they would perform their purpose with ease. Io's assistant came back out with his coat, the only difference being that it now had a patch on back where he could holster his guns. He slipped the coat back on and twirled the handguns around. Naruto grinned in satisfaction while looking at the guns. "Now, what to call you two?" He pondered. He thought for a few moments and then grinned. "The white one is Shiratama, White Soul, and the black one is Dakuhato, Dark Heart." Deciding they were good names, he holstered them. He then picked up the sword and gave it a few good swings. "What's your name then, pal?" He contemplated it before deciding. "Your name will be Onigi, Demon Devourer." Using chakra, he stuck it to his back. He then turned around and looked at Io crying. Naruto turned to his assistant and pointed his thumb at the boy's master. "What's wrong with him?" Naruto asked carefully. The assistant just sighed and shook his head. "He thinks it's beautiful when someone names their weapons like that," he replied simply, causing the silver-haired teen to sweat drop. Naruto turned and then walked towards the door. He called back to Io, "Thanks, old-timer, but I've got a mission. I'll be back another time." He then disappeared from the doorway, leavening a crying weapons maker and his assistant. Outside, Naruto began walking along the dirt path that took him to the border of Hai no Kuni, that was near Yu no Kuni, Hot Springs country. As he was walking, he was preparing on how he would get to Kaminari no Kuni by looking at a map Hiruin's Oji-san provided him with. Let's see here, Naruto thought, carefully inspecting the map and possible routes he could take. If I go at top speed, I should be able to get to the border in a couple hours. Then I could do one of two options, either pay for a ferry over or take the long way by going through the border again. By taking the ferry, I could cut 1 or 2 days off of the trip. I wouldn't suggest that, kid. Kyubi objected. You want some time to train with your new toys here, don't you? Not only that, but Echidna and I need to keep showing you moves as well as help with other aspects add on to your Rinnegan and Jutsu training still, and we've got a lot of stuff to do. I suggest we take the long way to get there and then take the ferry back, that way you can train on the way. I believe the Arrow Kitsune's idea is quite sound, Master, Echidna agreed. All right then, since you put up a convincing argument, the long way it is then, proclaimed Naruto with enthusiasm. He then picked up the pace, jumped to the trees, and picked up the pace. Get ready, Kaminari no Kuni, because it's show time. Days later, Naruto strolled up a rocky path as he made his way to the valley between the mountains where the village was. He was whistling a jaunty tune and had a small spring in his step, happy to almost be there. For the past few days, Naruto trained constantly while on the move, using shadow clones and all to improve his skills for the mission. He now believed he was more than ready to take on any demon this village threw at him. He was also somewhat surprised that he didn't come across any bandits on his way here, since Yugakure no Sato, Hidden Hot Springs Village, was no longer a shinobi village. Many bandits had roamed the area. He had been expecting to run across at least a few so he could practice a few moves against live opponents, but he had sadly come across none. Finally, after an hour of trekking through the mountainous regions, Naruto came to the final hill and looked onto the village below. It was medium size with a few large buildings and many smaller ones around. The outside was a bunch of mining entrances as well. From what he could guess, this village was primarily a mining village and that was where they got their main source of income. If he had to guess, Kumo probably got a lot of the materials for their weapons here, and that's why Sarutobi Oji-san had been grinning so much. Naruto took a sniff of the air. I can't smell any yokai here, he thought. Good demons can hide their signatures, kid, stated the demonic kitsune in his gullet. He's right, Naruto-sama, said Echidna. If I had to guess, this demon prefers darkness and hides in the mines during the day. Interesting theory, Naruto thought, slightly intrigued. I'll have to find out more once we get to the village and get information from the client. Naruto walked down the pathway toward the village. On his way down, he noted that it was slightly deserted due to the fact that so few people were on the roadway, and by the looks of things, in the village as well. The most likely cause of it was obviously the demon that was attacking the village. As he approached the entrance, he saw a woman in her mid-20s wearing a black dress standing there holding a folder. As he came closer, he saw that she was a beautiful brunette, her hair tied in a bun behind her head. She had light green eyes behind her glasses and full red lips. In his opinion, she was a work of art. Jackpot, he thought, walking up slowly. Hello there, beautiful, have you been waiting here for little old me? She blushed lightly at his appearance, but smiled nonetheless. That depends, she replied softly. Are you the shinobi we hired from Konoha? Naruto smirked, got down on his knees, and grabbed her hand. That would be me. My name is Naruto. Sparta Naruto. I'm at your service, madam. He kissed her hand, intensifying her blush and causing her to giggle lightly. You're quite the charmer, aren't you? He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Yeah, I get that a lot. No you don't, mocked his kitsune devil arm. Shut it, fuzz face, Naruto demanded. Naruto looked at the woman. So, I'm going to assume you're taking me to the contact? Yes, she replied and began to walk away, Naruto hot on her tail. My name is Yuko. I am the assistant to the mayor of the village. Naruto looked around and noticed there were fewer people than there should be. Yup, just like I thought, nearly a ghost town now. He looked directly at her. If you don't mind me asking, how long have these attacks been going on? She kept her face looking straight forward, but replied, almost 2 weeks now. The demon just showed up out of the blue and started attacking miners who went into the mines. About a few days later, it started raiding the village itself and proclaimed the area under its domain. There was almost nothing we could do then. About 2 weeks ago, Kumo finally sent shinobi to assist us, but they could not do much, despite 2 of the people being Jinchuriki. Naruto mentally froze for a second. They were people like who he was before. How strong were they? What powers did their demons give them? These questions ran through his mind. However, one question resounded the most. Would he have to fight them? He really did not want to fight them. They were, in a sense, comrades in arms. They probably knew the same pain, suffering, and loneliness he felt as a child. Kindred spirits in a way. No, fighting them was something he definitely wanted to avoid if he could. He also began to wonder what biju, tailed beasts, they had inside of them as well. Hey Kyubi, Echidna, do you know who Kumo has? From what I remember, they had Hachibi and Nibi as their demons, Echidna remembered. Really, Yuki and Matabi, my 2 favorite biju, commented Kyubi sarcastically. Okay. Well, I like Matabi, she's a little sexy kitten and incredible in bed. Women say men are perverts, but Matabi makes people like Jiraiya seem normal. Naruto sweat dropped. Is it even possible for someone to make Ero Sennin look normal? This also made Naruto think of 2 other things. Yo, 2 things I want you to answer. 1. You guys have names? Of course we have names, Baka. What? Did you think that our monikers humans gave us were our true names? Feeling Naruto nod his head, he sighed in exacerbation. Well, you were wrong. My name is Kurama, not Kyubi. Well, that was easy. Why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? Because you never asked, you smartass, Kurama roared. Okay, I get it. Thank you. I'll try and be more considerate next time. Good. Now what was your second question? If you and Matabi screwed when you were still outside of containers, isn't that like fucking your sister in a way? Well, demons don't see it that way. Even if you're related in some way, a mate is a mate. Yeah, okay Kurama, whatever helps you sleep at night. He tuned out his friend's roar of fury when he saw the woman beside him waving a hand in his face to catch his attention. Sorry, I was spacing out. What was it? I've been trying to get your attention, Yuko said, a bit worried. We've been at the front of the office for a few minutes now. Are you alright? He looked in front of him and saw they were in front of a gray cylindrical building with a balcony up top, most likely where the mayor was. It was overall just a pretty bland place. Deciding he didn't want to worry her, he smiled. "Yeah," he replied nonchalantly, "I've just been processing the information you've given me so far." She smiled as well. "Good then, I know the mayor wanted to see you as soon as you got into town, so why don't we head inside?" He grinned at her. "Of course, lead the way my beautiful flower." She blushed hard and playfully punched him. "Stop it, that's embarrassing." Seeing him still grinning, she pouted before giving up. "Jay, just follow me." They went inside and proceeded to the mayor's office, laughing all the way. "Mayor's office? What do you mean you hired another group of shinobi?" This was the shout that came from inside the office of village mayor Hiro Kutra as an enraged red-headed Kumo Nin was being held back by one of her teammates from biting his head off. "Karui, chill," called a dark spiky white-haired boy with a lollipop in his mouth. He was wearing an overlong shirt with a hood, handguards, and shin guards. He had a Kumo headband on his forehead and a sword on his back. "If you don't calm down and you kill him, we'll cause an incident. The whole village will hate us and force us out. Then Raikage-sama, lighting shadow, will force us to clean the public restrooms as punishment for a week for failing." "No way, Omoi," returned the redhead. Karui. She was a dark-skinned kunoichi with amber eyes. She wore a kumogakure flak jacket, 2 simple yellow earrings, fishnet stockings, and thigh-high boots. She wore the Kumo headband as a bandana and had a sword on her back. "He fucking hired another group of shinobi. There is no way that you're supposed to do that. It's like betraying your own country." "Karui, calm down," said a pony-tailed blonde. She was fair-skinned. She wore a short-sleeved black and purple blouse, black pants, purple fingerless gloves, and a chain of white beads wound around her left hand. She wore the Kumo headband around her forehead. "We don't know that's exactly what he did, so you need to calm down." "Enough, Karui," stated a buxom blonde in the back who had been silent up until now. She was fair-skinned and had her hair that reached to her shoulders in back. She wore a very low-cut outfit with mesh underneath, a short skirt, red handguards, high boots, and what looked like a modified Kumo flak jacket around her stomach. "We have enough problems and we don't need you causing more." But, before she was finished, she had been cut off by the giant dark-skinned man who appeared at her side, with a hand on her shoulder. "No time for a fire, dear little Spitfire," the raped the large man lamely. He was a muscular man with white hair, a white goatee, and a bullhorn tattoo. He wore black sunglasses, a white Kumo flak jacket, and a white scarf, a red rope around his waist, shin guards, and shinobi sandals. He had a white Kumo headband around his forehead and 7 swords on his back. "But B-sensei," she tried again. "No, little Spitfire, now stop acting like a livewire. Be more like Samui and Yugito. Yeah, feel me." He raped again. B then turned to the mayor. "Why ya hire another village, ya fool?" The mayor, an older and plump gentleman sitting behind his desk, sighed and ran a hand through his graying hair. "I'm sorry," he apologized in a tired voice, "but it is obvious you can't handle the situation." He then looked toward Karui. "As for betraying our country, the daimyo has a vested interest in the mine for its precious metals. He told me to get the mine up by whatever means necessary, even if it means turning to another village for assistance." "And what village did you turn to?" asked Samui, still very calm despite the situation. "We sent contracts to every major village." The first to reply and send aid was Konohagakure no Sato. "What?" shout the 5 shinobi. Even the normally calm Samui, it was an insult to the village enough that the client asked for help from another village, but asking Konoha was like a slap in the face to Kumo considering past relations. The first to recover was the ponytailed blonde, Yugito. "Sir, with all due respect, if you had hired Iwa, Kiri, or even Suna, we would understand. However, to hire Konoha, a village we have already had rocky relations with, for help, we would have been better off handling it on our own. And with all due respect to you and your village, Yugito-san, it is obvious you can't handle it," replied the mayor. "This village is dying. We used to have over 10,000 villagers. Now, we're down to only 2,000. This is in a matter of weeks." He stood up and walked to the window behind him. He looked down on the village below as he continued to talk. "I grew up in this village and watched it boom. I was here when the mines first opened. I love this village with all of my heart and I will do whatever it takes to protect it." He turned around and looked them in the eyes. "Even if it means I have to hire shinobi that weren't from my own country." He would have continued had there not been a knock at the door. His assistant entered the room. "Sir," she began, "the Konoha shinobi has arrived and is waiting for you outside." The older man looked at her and smiled. "Thank you, Yuko," he told her. "Please, send him in if you would be so kind." She nodded and left. Karui snorted. "One shinobi, huh?" She mocked. "They must really think they're all that to just send one. She noticed the rest of her team give her a glare that said, "Not helping." She was about to ask, "What?" when the door opened and shocked everybody in the room. Standing in the doorway was a boy that looked about 1 or 2 years younger than them. He was ashen skinned and had silvery, spiked hair and icy blue eyes. His face was devoid of baby fat, and on each of his cheeks were 3 whisker-like marks that gave him a feral-like appearance. He wore black Anbu-styled pants and no shirt, showing of his nice six-pack. He also wore a purple trench coat with a Konoha leaf symbol on each shoulder. He used his headband as a belt, which also had a strange weapon and a few scrolls hanging off it. His back was a giant sword. Both parties sized each other up. The silver-haired teen just stood there looking at them with face so blank, none of them could read him. Each member of the team from Kumo had their own thoughts. Omoi was thinking about possible scenarios for how this could end. So far, he had come up with them getting into a fight and losing 2 team members before they finally killed him. Then that would end up causing more problems with Konoha, and from what he heard, despite the Hokage's old age, not even the Raikage wanted to mess with the Shinobi no Kami, god of Shinobi. Samui was taking a more analytical standpoint. While she was not thinking along the lines of Omoi, she was thinking more about what could happen. Whether or not there would be an engagement between them and the Konoha Shinobi. She was also thinking somewhat deep in the back of her mind about how hot he was. Karui was thinking 2 things. She was pissed that this guy standing before her was a Konoha Shinobi, standing in their territory, a village they had constantly thought with had a shinobi in their country, upon the request of their citizens. She too was also thinking about how sexy he was as well. If it weren't for the fact that he was a Konoha Shinobi, she probably would have tried flirting. Yugito was having a conversation with the friend in her head. "It's not happening, Nibi," she thought, blushing furiously. "Come on, kitten," replied the giant cat in her head. "You know you really want to jump him right now and just..." "Nibi," shouted Yugito in her head and began blushing even more furiously. B was also talking with his inner counterpart about the matter. "What's the matter, Hachibi? You act in more like Nibi, bro," he rapped horribly. "First of all, stop rapping, you idiot," began the tailed ox. "Second, don't say I'm acting like a scared cat. Third, I'm a bit shaken because of that kid. His energy feels familiar to 2 different demons. Double trouble, ya fool. That's a possibility. One feels like an ancient devil and the other feels like my least favorite person in the world. Wasn't your least favorite person that kitsune that burned Konoha asunder, ya? No? Yup, that would be him. This must be his container. B. Don't take the boy lightly. There's energy is rolling off of him in waves. We'll talk about it more later, but whatever you do not expose his status right now. Gotcha, ya fool." Finally, after a tense moment of silence, the boy just grinned at everyone in the room. "Sorry, didn't mean to crash the party," he said smoothly. "I just wanted to know about my mission before I got to work." He then looked toward the mayor. "I'm going to assume you're the client?" The mayor nodded and walked toward the boy. He held out his hand in a friendly gesture. "Yes, that would be me," he replied. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hiro Kutra. I am the mayor of this fine village." The boy took the hand. "Naruto, Sparta Naruto. I am the assistance you requested. I specialize in demon hunting, capture, and/or elimination." "That's quite the profession for one so young," Kutra commented wearily. "I'm 13, old-timer." That was a shock to the other shinobi in the room. He was that age and performing an A-ranked mission like this on his own. Now they definitely could not underestimate him. Naruto turned and looked at them. He easily picked out the 2 other containers in the room. The beautiful ponytailed blonde had the Neko demon and the big burly man had the ox. He could tell the girl contained the Nibi because of her body type just looking at her and her cat-like pose. He could just tell. As for the other one, he literally made no attempts to hide it. The seal was clear as day on his arm. What to do? What to do? He pondered casually. Do I call them out on it or do I wait and do it after introductions? Personally, as much as I enjoy watching you screw with people, I think I would be best to do it later, Kurama stated. Nodding at his weapon's suggestion, he turned to the other shinobi in the room. "So, what can I call you guys, huh? And what will you do with them?" asked Omoi suspiciously. "Will you take our names and send them back to your village to add to your bingo books and have us recognized all over the shinobi world?" Naruto's sweat dropped at the question. "I only wanted to know so I didn't have to refer to you generically like Kumo Nin 1 foot or Kumo Nin A, or, if you want, I could come up with my own names for you." He placed his hands in a pondering gesture. "Now, what do I call you? Wait, how about I call you Overthinker?" He pointed at Karui. "I'll call you Red." He then pointed at Samui. "I'll call you Beautiful." Next was Yugito. "I'll call you Nibi-chan." Finally, he moved to B. "And you, well, you get Hachibi Dono." All 5 of them stood there, Motionless, the fact that he knew that they were Jinchuriki was a surprise. Samui gave Omoi and Karui a look and they sprang into action. The three of them disappeared in a blur. Omoi and Karui appeared behind him, with their swords coming down in a slashing motion, while Samui appeared in front with her tanto drawn and ready to stab him in the stomach. Naruto saw their movements as incredibly slow. He drew Onigi and held it to block the strikes coming from behind with his other hand. He drew Pyrotekuda and pointed it right at Samui's head before she could strike. The three of them froze as they saw what had happened. As only a blur in their eyes, he had blocked Omoi and Karui's attack using that giant sword one-handed and still was able to point an unknown weapon into Samui's face to stop her advance. Their tactics could easily beat Jonin-level shinobi, and yet this guy blocked them like it was nothing. He was, as they had originally thought, very dangerous. He grinned at them all. Now, that's not the way to make a good first impression, you know, he chided them playfully. I mean, we barely exchange a few words of dialogue and you attack me. Do none of you know the rules of engagement? Must I remind everybody I meet? He sighed comically. Great, okay everybody. Here's how it works. We exchange greetings, have a few minutes of witty banter, and then we fight. Does everybody understand now? Kami. I had to explain it to those Iwa shinobi last week. I had at least hoped Kumo shinobi would know. Instead of sweat dropping like they wanted to, they all stayed on guard. Yugito decided to try and get information out of him. How did you know we were Jinchuriki? She asked carefully. Her friends were in a situation where she did not want the guy to get angry and haul off on them. He had Samui staring straight into one of his weapons. She had to be very careful. Naruto scoffed slightly. Do you really think that it's that hard to ascertain? He asked. You can tell if a person is a Jinchuriki by through three methods of reasoning. 1. Who does the person carry themselves? While I have only met one other Jinchuriki, I find that they usually have some sort of mask up as deception to hide their true thoughts and feelings. Also, a person's body language and movement allows me to tell 2. Does the person have a specific marking or symbol on them that is not natural or looks man-made? If so, then you're most likely a Jinchuriki. 3rd and final. Naruto pointed one of the fingers on his gun toward B. When their fucking seal is visible on their bodies like on, I don't know, their arms, that person is obviously Jinchuriki. B had the decency to look a bit sheepish when he explained his reasoning while the others slowly lowered their weapons. He was right in a way. Jinchuriki could most likely be defined by those reasons, and he hit the hammer on the head of the nail on that one. B decided not to call him out on his demon situation just yet, but he would later. Instead, he decided to play along. Well, you got me kiddo, I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. 'Cause I'm the 8 tails, the great killer bee. Yugito was still hesitant, but gave her name as well. I am Ni Yugito, she stated slowly, and you were correct in saying I'm the Nibi Jinchuriki. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-san. Omoi, who had calmed down, held out a hand to Naruto, who had put his weapons away. Fine then, I can be civil, he said. The name is Omoi. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-san. Naruto shook his hand in a friendly manner. Naruto then set his sights on Samui and Karui. He sped towards them and got on his knees, each with one of their hands in his. And who are you two lovely mountain flowers? He asked in a flirtatious manner. Karui started sputtering out nonsense before finally getting out her name, Karui. She stammered before pulling her hand away, clearly embarrassed. Samui, however, while her cheeks were a bit red, kept her cool. Samui, she replied simply without a hint of emotion. Naruto kissed her hand, shocking everyone in the room. Samui's face also betrayed a look of surprise and her cheeks had fully reddened. Naruto looked up at her. What a perfect name. 'Cause you're making me kind of hot under the collar, he joked. We'll go quite well together, no? B looked at his student in amusement as this was the first time he had seen her so visibly flustered. No matter what he or anyone else did, her face never betrayed a single emotion at all. He really had to give props to his fellow Jinchuriki for making his student show some emotion. Yugito, Omoi, and Karui looked on in shock at what had just happened. Their teammate, the one many of the shinobi in their generation had aptly named the emotionless bitch, was blushing up a storm. She never did that. She had been asked out by some of the most desirable people in the village even, and she never accepted or blushed once. Yet this guy right here was flirting with Samui and actually getting results. They felt that if the apocalypse came right now, they wouldn't be surprised. A small part of Yugito, for an unknown reason, felt jealous as well. Why was he flirting with Samui? Why hadn't he done the same to her, or maybe Karui? Why did? Kitten sounds a bit jealous, said a voice in the back of their head. My, you don't even know him for a day and you're already interested in him. Nibi, it's not like that at all, Yugito responded with hesitance. Oh, just admit it. You want his body, you want him to ravish you all night long, you want that Adonis to just take his giant sword and thrust it. Nibi, Yugito shouted in her mind to once again silence her inner demon. Despite she knew part of what she was saying was true, though she wouldn't admit it, her pride as a kunoichi would not allow her to become a pervert. Back with Samui, her mind had frozen. There had been many bold attempts by men to seduce her. She could tell because a kunoichi knew all about seduction. No man, however, had ever been successful because they had never caught her interest. The man before her, however, was an enigma. 1 minute, he was incredibly serious and showed immense skill. The next, however, he became a joker. Usually she would never like a man like this, but there was something about him that just made him special in her eyes. Finally getting over her blush, she managed to return her face to its normal impassive look. Before pulling away her hand, she rejoined the rest of her team, who were still dumbfounded by the events that had just occurred. When they all looked at her, she threw them a cold glare, causing them to back off. Naruto was grinning to himself like a fool. Score. All these Kumo chicks are beautiful, he thought happily. Then again, I've never met an unfine kunoichi before, so that doesn't make much sense. Naruto then felt a mental slap to his head, causing him to get a headache. Alright, which one of you did that? Both of us, Kit, replied Kurama with a slight growl. What did I do? I told you not to call them out on the Jinchuriki thing, and what do you go and do? You call them out on it? The only reason they probably haven't figured out your one was because you came up with an elaborate line of thinking, which I didn't even think you could do. Ye of little hay, I take offense to that. You were supposed to. Okay. Now I knew why you did it, but why did you hit me, Echidna? Because, Naruto-sama, you need to stop flirting so much, the green demoness replied simply. She says that Naruto, but in reality she is just YOLO. Kurama was cut off by sound of someone being smacked. Silly Naruto ignored the cries of help and went back to reality. Naruto looked toward the mayor and smiled at him. Well, now that I've had my fun, let's get down to business, he said lightly. I'll need you to give me a full recount of what is happening. Kutra looked at Naruto and nodded. Yes, of course, he responded. He went to the small bar he had on the other side of the room and poured himself a glass of sake. It started 2 weeks ago. Our miners were down in the mines and had reported problems with some of the equipment that stopped productivity for about an hour, but that was it. It wasn't really out of the ordinary at all because it happens at least once a month or so. About an hour after they began work again, a few of the workers began to complain about a strange noise they heard coming down from one of the abandoned mine shafts. The head in charge of the mine, my brother now, thought it would be a good idea to send a small team down to investigate. A few minutes after they went down, they reported some strange shadows moving around down there. Kutra paused for a minute, and that's when it happened. The miners who had gone down, they started screaming over the radio about something being down there and to get them out. But before they could be pulled up, the team lost radio contact. My brother was about to order another team to go down and find them, but these dark shadows and creatures with red eyes came crawling out of the shaft. My brother had them all run and radioed the crews on the outside to place some explosives on the entrance to the mine. He got out as many as he could before he had them detonate the explosives and seal the entrance. We thought the problem was over, but it was just the beginning. Soon, one night several days after the entrance was destroyed, we heard an explosion that came from the mine. The entrance had been blown open and the demons came to the village. They wrecked everything in sight. Those who could not hide were slaughtered or dragged back to the mine. We lost over 200 people that night. We lost another 100 the next night, another 50 the night after. Casualties and disappearances just kept growing. Soon, people began to leave of their own volition until finally, we were down to the numbers we're at now. Kutra turned to the shinobi in the room. Please, I understand your villages hate each other, but we're desperate. Please, work together and stop these demons by whatever means necessary. Naruto looked into the eyes of the desperate mayor. He saw a fire in this man's eyes that showed he cared greatly for this village if need be. That look told Naruto he would lay his life down for it just to see it survive. It was a will that reminded him of the old man's will to protect Konoha. He would help this man. Naruto looked toward his counterparts from Kumo. Look, I think we know our villages have had a lot of problems with each other, he began. But I am willing to put aside whatever problems our villages may have right now. Why would you want that? Asked Karui suspiciously. Naruto smiled at her, because, he pointed to Kutra, this village is very important to him. He loves it with all of his heart and soul. He is pleading us to help him and I would like to. Samui looked at him now. What would you ask of us, Naruto-san? She asked curiously. Naruto grinned at her. I want to work together. Seeing their shocked looks, he continued, I want to swap information. You tell me anything you know. I tell you anything I know. If we ask each other for assistance or it is required, we will work together. So in other words, you're suggesting a temporary alliance of sorts, stated Omoi with certainty. But isn't that against our protocols, B-sensei? Asked Yugito to her teacher. B looked thoughtful for a moment and walked to Naruto. The silver-haired teen stretched out a hand. What do you say, big guy? Naruto began. Want to give it the old college try? B looked at it for a moment before grinning and shaking his outstretched hand. You've got yourself a deal, little man.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.